Hello, everybody, and welcome to the deepest dive on Halo Infinite from MinnMax. I am Ben Hansen, joined by, so many wonderful people. Suriel Vasquez.
Hello.
Returning champion. Thank you for being here, Suriel. Jeff Markiafava with the internet of a Goliath.
Ow.
And we have Kyle Hilliard.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Inside jokes. And Wade Wojcik, returning Halo champion.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Oh, yes, that's the voice of a confident man. That's the voice. And I'm not, comparing you to anybody, but I talked to Kyle earlier today for MinnMax Council, our Patreon exclusive podcast, and I could hear the sweat dripping from his forehead while we were podcasting because he was so nervous about having to talk about the second half of Halo Infinite story. But Wade strolls in here with his hands behind his head. He's like, I am ready to unload everything, every ounce of knowledge about the second half of Halo Infinite's campaign.
I've been looking forward to this for weeks.
We are here, everybody. Thank you so much. If you somehow are watching this and didn't check out the first installment, the first discussion that we had, first of all, leave a comment because I'm fascinated by you and your life and what brought you here to Earth. But this is the second half of the deepest dive on Halo Infinite. So in this discussion, we're covering everything in the game from the Pelican Down mission through end credits and everything else. So spoilers, obviously, for the second half of Halo Infinite. And if you just clicked onto this and you said, well, I want to hear these lovely people, especially Jeffem, that rutabaga of a man down there. I want to hear him talk. I don't know what that means. I want to hear him talk about Halo Infinite, but I don't want to sit on YouTube. You can unlock the podcast version of this deepest dive, all of our other deepest dives, by supporting us on patreon.com/MinnMax with 2 N's at the $5 tier. You unlock the podcast version right in your favorite podcast app. So it's a nice way to help support the Game Club format. Tell a friend if you enjoy it. Is that it? Are we ready to go? Ready to dive into the second half of Halo Infinite? We collected a bunch of comments from the community over on Patreon. If you support us at any tier, you can leave a comment. We're going to read all those. That's where all these comments are coming from. But we like to play a game which is most common comment. What was the most recurring sentiment about the second half of Halo Infinite's campaign? Kyle, you seem the most intrigued by these quizzes. What do you think?
About the weapon getting frustrated with Master Chief for not trusting her. Getting annoyed with him reasonably. That whole sort of emotional journey that we went on with her.
I think that might be the number 2, is talking about emotions with weapon, but not quite. Jeffem, what do you think?
Repetitive objectives.
Yes, certainly in the ballpark. Suriel?
The point of no return in that game?
Interesting. Wade, what do you think?
I'm going to go with what the heck happened at the ending.
Correct. It is. If I had to define it, it was just kind of like general disappointment with the story, with the ending. Because I remember, I think in the first discussion, we kind of left it and I was like, well, I think the gameplay is going to dip down a little bit in the second half and the story is going to pick up a little bit. And ultimately, I don't think that quite landed. I don't think the story personally came together as much as I was hoping. I don't know. Yeah, Kyle, you seem to be shaking your head.
Well, I the thing that I mentioned about the weapon getting frustrated with Master Chief for not trusting her and him like going to delete her and her being like, what the hell, dude? Like, that's not cool. I don't want to be your friend anymore. That was like the most interesting part of the story, period, to me. Everything else was just like, huh? Who's this? wait, you are Cortana? I thought we knew that from the beginning. Was that supposed to be a twist? You're like a copy? I don't know. I was just sort of confused by the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, but genuinely, no jokies. Jeffem, can you tell me the story of Halo Infinite? Can you tell me the story that somebody at 343 put up on a whiteboard, walked other people through? Because this is the part that I'm trying to rack my brain around. Is like, what is the story that was told that got people excited? Because I can't believe it's this.
Okay, and this is a fun game because I finished it like 3 weeks ago. So now I can really think back.
Yes, all right.
So the disaster of Halo 4 and 5 happened.
Wow, okay.
You get stuck on a new Halo.
Yeah.
And then you find out that there's a weapon there, a secret weapon that you have to figure out. And I don't think, did Master Chief even know what the weapon was when he was going for it? Or was it just
Now, when you're
He's a
saying
space grunt. This is the objective.
when you're saying the weapon, you mean the character weapon?
Yes.
I don't know.
I have an
he knew.
amazing name for her that I really thought she was going to say out loud when he was like, "You can name yourself." You guys ready for it?
Yeah, what do you think?
Cortana.
I was gonna go with Tutana.
But I'm just saying, let's call her
So
that.
anyway,
Okay, so he knew
now
about
that
it because
the
he had
jokes
that
are aside,
secret knowledge. Yes, so he went down to
gets
get
the
it.
weapon.
Yes.
He finds out that the space gorillas are trying to activate the Halo anyway and no one really knows what it is or what it's going to do.
Right.
Right?
You're right.
Okay. So
got that.
he goes to stop them. There's one big bad guy whose name isn't Asterisk because Asterisk was killed
Yep.
before Eshram or something like that.
And for everybody who's a big Halo fan that tuned into this and they're lighting themselves on fire right now, don't worry. Wade's in the chamber. Wade is ready to go.
Yeah.
But this is just
Yeah,
for a little
do it.
test. Yeah.
This is the layman's
Right.
what we walked away with. Eshram was also working with floaty space lady.
Yep.
I can't remember
The
what
most
their name
important
for
character
her
of the game,
was.
Got a
Harbinger.
weird tooth on her lower lip, right? It's interesting.
Yeah, and so they were trying to activate an auditorium or a conservatory or some other name for a normal
Okay.
room
Yep.
that does something else here
Yeah.
that we still don't know. But we eventually find out that it's a way to resurrect the Endless.
Yep.
Don't ask me who they are.
Do you-
But you stop her, and then Master Chief pulls a hangover, and he wakes up 3 days later, and he's
Right.
like, "Where am I?" And there are some concrete rings outside on this other ring, and no one knows, which is fun.
Yeah.
Because for the first time, I was confused, but I was supposed to be confused along with everyone else, apparently. And
Right.
that's how you end a game?
and Cortana is
Credits.
Yeah. Cortana was actually dead the whole time, but she set up this whole master plan to help Master Chief beat Toothy Lady
right. That's right. The big Harbinger herself.
by also using the new Cortana, which we all knew was still Cortana, but for some reason...
She was not aware of that. Wait, did you understand that idea?
She also, wait, real quick, we have to point out she also had a killer answering machine joke that really got me.
Oh,
What was that?
what, Cortana pretending that she was still alive?
Yeah, she's like, JK, I'm dead. Gotcha.
It was
Oh,
solid.
yeah.
But if she
Yeah,
knew that
that's
the
right.
clone was in there, there would be acting, not the clone, but the same version of her would be exactly the exact same way. Never mind. Okay. Yeah, Wade, help us out.
So that's a tough thing. I mean, obviously, she looks and sounds almost exactly like Cortana.
Right.
Whether or not that was a twist, to me, it didn't matter if we knew or didn't know, because
How could she
the
not
important
know?
well, that's the thing. She keeps asking about, hey, what was so bad that Cortana did? I don't really know what's going on here. All I know about the world is that this was my objective. I don't even know who the Banished are. So for her to figure that out and see her reaction, I think that's what was interesting to me.
Yeah.
And the drama that came out of that. That's probably my favorite cutscene of the whole game, just because seeing how she was finally maturing. I drew a lot of parallels personally between this and BioShock Infinite.
Huh.
You see Elizabeth mature throughout that game, and you see the weapon mature throughout the game as well. And that was the moment, where she finally she had her petty you were gonna delete me phase, then finally was like, okay, I now understand the situation. I'm coming to terms with what I am and what that means.
And normally it's seen as petty when someone tries to murder you. Just petty.
Well, no,
thing.
I mean,
I hear ya.
when my reaction was like, hey, I was you were going to be deleted anyway. What are you so mad about? But, and then Chief was like, you broke protocol. And she was like, well, yeah, but I got this new data that's going to help us. And it's like, well, you still broke protocol. We're in the military. You're not supposed to do that. But
Right.
anyway, no, I still thought it was a very powerful moment in the story, just because it was, that's the heart of the story. The heart is the weapon in chief moving on past what's happened with him and Cortana and him getting through that. I thought it was so much more effective on an emotional level for Chief than everything they put him through in 4 and 5 for sure.
Really? Okay, so as somebody who hasn't played 4 and 5, I was curious just how this story landed with you. Like outside of that moment, like the story of Halo Infinite as a whole, Wade, like what'd you think? Did it work? Is it a success? Is it a failure? Give us the breakdown here.
So I honestly, when I first saw the trailers for the game, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to like this new AI. She seems sort of like zany and like maybe they're trying to write it for younger for younger players. I don't know, but she totally won me over. And the thing that I just really loved about the story was the understated, subtle reactions that Chief had, and how short his responses were, but you could really sense his underlying emotion, and how his relationship evolved with the weapon and the pilot and Fernando Esparza, as we know at the end of the game, throughout the story. It was such like a small and focused, there's only about 6 or 7 characters in the whole story. And so it's very focused, which I like. The heart is that weapon and Chief story with Cortana, obviously. Yeah. Unfortunately, the game is doing 2 separate things. And this is where I don't think it quite lands with me. They don't pay off the Banished and the Endless. That's till whatever next game or whatever's coming next. But They spent the whole game setting that up. They did pay off Cortana as much as they could, but they didn't really set that up enough for me. I mean, towards the end in the Silent Auditorium, you see those cutscenes, flashbacks of her and what she did in the time between 5 and Infinite.
Blew planets up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it goes so quickly from recapping her villain persona to her greeting Chief with that answering machine in such a, hey, cutesy way. It's like, wait a minute, like, how did this change happen? I think they tried to play it off like, oh, the change happened when she realized, oh, I screwed up. Now the Banished have the Halo and I made everything wrong. But it's like, right. I don't see the Cortana from Halo 5 transitioning back to who she was previously just because of that. That seemed to be strange to me. Yeah,
but I think part of that fuel of trying to make her jump that gap and go back to the Cortana that's a little bit more relatable and likable from earlier in the series is like, well, that's what the community wants, right? So it's like, look, we know we're kind of just getting rid of a lot of the setup that was in 5, but for this grand finale of a conversation between Cortana and Chief, like, who's really going to complain if, she makes a little bit of a leap and suddenly is a little bit nice?
I totally agree. But there was this one comment that pointed it out, and it was said, after destroying multiple colonies in a species' homeworld, ending billions of lives, Cortana realized that throughout all that, she had forgotten the most important thing in life, the power of love and friendship. And to me, that is just like, it just feels a little weak that she suddenly was just like, hey, I'm back. I know that that's what the fans wanted to see. Right. I mean, I agree too. But it's like the last... I'm not going to get into Game of Thrones. But anyway, it's like you're just jumping from A to B without putting in the work to get there. They put in a lot of work for the Banished and Harbinger and the Endless. Well, sort of. We'll get into that. But the jump from where we were at the end of 5 to the end to Cortana at the end of this game seemed to lack a little bit of setup. Yeah. But besides that, I absolutely love the story. I love the campaign. It's my favorite Halo since Halo 3. That includes Reach. That includes ODST. I'm a big fan of this campaign.
Really? Fan. God, okay. I feel like you're burying the lead, man. That is surprising. All right, well,
yeah. I mean, because it has that heart. Reach didn't really have a heart to it, and ODST didn't. I
would disagree with that. I think Reach has a lot.
Yeah,
of heart.
I think isn't the fan consensus that Reach has like the most heart?
No, it's just. I mean, it's a bunch of like cold, emotionless Spartans. I want to get into human drama.
Okay. There is a human drama, and we're about to be wiped by a laser, but we're going to do our best to like send our best opportunity that we have into space.
We can get into that. Anyway, it's for me. It's my favorite. Yeah, it's definitely my favorite Halo in 10 years or more.
Wow. Serial, second half. What'd you think, man?
I feel like the story I'm kind of mixed on, because I do agree with Wade that I think the strongest part of this story ends up being the relationship between Master Chief, the weapon, and Cortana. I also agree that I think they take one too many shortcuts to try to get there, because I feel like this game, like I mentioned last week, it feels like it is actively trying to get you to forget about the plot of Halo 5 as much as possible. Right. Because leaving off of there, that's like Cortana is almost omnisciently powerful with the hand, with the power of the Guardians by her side. Like these are these incredibly powerful things, and she's also getting the AIs to try to lean into her side. We don't see the repercussions of that thread really at all. And so instead you get kind of this time skip, which they kind of fill out, but I think by the end you're still kind of left pretty vague on like what happened between that time skip. But I think the moment of Master Chief kind of finally, after always being so trusting, and in Halo 5 especially, I think he is the last person to believe in Cortana, where he is always like, dude, we got to get rid of Cortana. Cortana is the bad guy. And Chief is constantly like, no, I'm going to do whatever I can to save Cortana. And in 5, he finally is like I've seen this happen before. Like it went badly. I feel like I made a mistake in letting Cortana live. So I'm going to try to rectify that mistake. And the weapon kind of rebuffs it by saying I am not Cortana. Like in a way, I am not that person. You need to let go of that. Right. And I think that is, a pretty strong emotional thread. But I think, when it gets wrapped up in okay, there's another precursor-ish race called, the Endless, and, the Banished are kind of allied with them. All of that stuff I think gets really muddy and kind of hard to follow for a lot of it, especially when you are being fed all of these different threads of okay, all the audio logs are from the before times, or it's the Banished monologuing about kind of their motivations, but you should be caring about the Harbinger, what's going on now. I feel like all of that stuff gets so crowded that it is hard to have even after the final cutscene, it's hard to have okay, what is kind of the key here? And I think it is that kind of redemption of Cortana through the weapon, of saying here's a fresh start, we're going to start over, and now we can kind of start from square one after kind of some trauma between Chief and Cortana, etc. But I think that it ends up kind of muddied throughout that entire thing, and so the story kind of left me a little kind of scratching my head and trying to figure out. I had to read up on it a lot and say oh, okay, so this is what happened. I guess that works, but the storytelling I think is pretty kind of patchwork and didn't really work for me. But I think the ultimate result here, I think, is okay, they did what they kind of felt they had to, and I guess we can just go from here. But it does feel like a stumble that is okay, you've managed to pick yourself up, but it you did not nail the landing, let's say.
Yeah, it was a big ramp up to tell more stories in this universe in the future. It was a lot of table setting, but that table setting was just so many holograms talking to each other. I really had a tough time. If you put a gun to my head as the credits were rolling and asked, again, I'm an idiot. I'm aware of that. I've only played Halo 1, so take a grain of salt, grain of salt. But if you would have asked me the simplest questions, how is Atriox alive? What happened to Cortana? Who is the Harbinger? What was she trying to do? I would have absolutely no clue on every front.
And that's what I think is definitely the weakest part of 343's storytelling, in that because they know, and I said this last time, because they know everything about the Halo universe, it feels like they're trying to write a story to be surprising, but since they know everything, I think their judgment on their what's clear and what comes across as clear is a little biased and hard to follow.
That's interesting. So we had when I was feeling most self-conscious. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, I think that dovetails into what Bungie always did with their lingo, and what 343 decided, hey, let's also carry that through, where they give things these names of other things that exist in our universe, but they mean something slightly different. But then they deliver it in that way that Wade's talking about, where it's oh yeah, the silent auditorium, we're going there, and then it's wait, what? But and we're going to release the Endless, and I'm the Harbinger, whatever. And it's you just said 3 things in this one sentence that I'm hazy at best if I understand what you're talking about.
I don't understand. What should they do? What do you want them to do? You want them to call it the Zib Zab room instead of the silent auditorium? It's just silent auditorium is it's just
I think the issue is that I think Bungie was good at there were a lot of proper nouns, but they were very much good at I felt like they were better about keeping fewer of them in your head at a given time and kind of doling out one at a time of like, okay, there are 3 prophets. We are going after the prophet of regret. And then like, so you hear the words, the prophet of regret. Every once in a while, you'll hear the name of the other prophets, but it's like, okay, you are going after this one specifically, and you need to get to the silent cartographer. And then, okay, the silent cartographer leads to the flood. And so now you're fighting the flood, and it is made very clear. So it's like, they're better at kind of keeping tabs on like their different proper nouns, and I think 343 is. Yeah,
I think there's something to that, and there's something so weird just about the storytelling in this game too, where it's teasing this just abyss of, I don't understand what's happening with Cortana. I don't understand what's happening with this, the endless, everything, a lot of confusion with the words. But what they keep throwing in your face again and again and again is just a hologram of Askarim screaming at you, just saying, I like to fight, and we crushed you. It honestly, like by the end, how many of those sequences are there? It was, and I mean this with all disrespect, it was Pokemon level dialogue of just one character hitting the same note over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. It's like, I got it. The one thing I know is that this big gorilla guy does not like me. I got that from the first cutscene, from the second cutscene. I understand there's Aatrox and Askarim, different characters. Message received game, and it just kept going again and again and again. Yeah,
and it feels like he's auditioning for WWE, and it was the same reason that like I stopped. Like, I was still picking up the banished tapes, but I was doing like the tap to just add it to your inventory because I just couldn't take any of it seriously. And I didn't want to listen to there's 45 seconds of, backstory, which I'm sure is interesting, but it's delivered in like the gruffest Vince McMahon's pissed at me kind of way that it's impossible to take seriously.
It's just there's no new info, at least outside of the tapes. In the main story, there's no new information that Askarim is delivering to you every scene with him. There's no trickle of anything outside of what? Hey, he's got a weird relationship with the Harbinger. It's a real, I guess we're aligned thing.
And that's a general problem with a lot of the cutscenes. Like when the Harbinger shows up, there's really not a whole lot of information you get. And it's the same thing. The Endless will return and all this. It's like, but that doesn't mean anything to me as far as like, what is it? What are the stakes? I don't understand if I should care about that.
Well, you should, because they're worse than the Flood. I told you that. And that if this thing's operational.
But again, that's like the great thing about the Flood introduction in Halo 1 is that you didn't have to be told about how dangerous they were. You saw it through the setup to their reveal.
Right.
It's the show don't tell adage.
Yeah, they were also, there's a direct line to draw to the Flood of Zom. I don't know what the Endless threat is, really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be too harsh. I understand creating a narrative for a game is hard, and so it's not as simple as those writers are stupid over there. Like, far from it. It feels rickety. It feels like the type of game that's just been reworked so many times and kind of stitched together, and then they can focus test it, and people will say, yeah, I think I understand. It's like, okay, good enough. Like, it just feels like a game that it's so complicated and weird the way it's all structured that it's really tough to tell if the story is hitting or not. And I think that individual character moments do hit, but by and large, I was just flatlining by the end.
It just reminds me of how in Halo 5, the first thing I walked away with was the whole story is just you trying to figure out what Cortana is doing. And that's it. There's not a lot happens. With this, it does have echoes of that. And it reminds me of, prior to Halo Infinite, there's a book that came out. It's Shadow something. It's the book about when Chief goes to Reach with Blue Team on this secret covert mission to recover something from Castle Base, from like Halsey's lab. And it's not revealed what they're getting. It's just, it's an important mission and it's going to lead to how they fight Cortana. And no one knows what they're getting. It's just these couple like boxes. And then Chief gets them, brings them back to Halsey. And then you think, okay, they're going to reveal what's in it. Like what's in the box and how is it going to lead to the next story, Halo Infinite. And all Halsey said is, this is gonna like hurt, but it's necessary. It's our only way to stop. And it's just like, don't find out what's in the box at the end of the book. And it's like, that feels like what is happening here, where it's like, this is important and tune in next week to find out. Of course, now we know it was like the flash clone of Halsey's brain to make the weapon. That's what was in the box. That's how they could fight. Oh, and so it makes sense in retrospect. It's like, okay, yeah, now I get it. But it's like, it's okay to have some satisfying closure to these threads. And that's why, like, I thought it was so silly that they didn't reveal what the weapon's name was at the end. It's like, it's okay, to have some landing of these threads at the end. You don't have to leave everything to the next game. That would have been a really nice, like, thing to end on. Oh, now we know her name. But
well, we got Echo's name, so that's
Cortana.
That's right.
We know what it is.
Okay, dumb question. Just to cover all these basics. Why did she have to be a clone of Cortana? Why did it have to be an exact copy? What was her purpose? What was she doing?
It's like one of the many, like, well, I don't want to say many, but a couple of, like, it's been this way all along reveals of, like, she has that snap. Mm-hmm. Of, like, because she was able to replicate Cortana's programming, she was able to basically open all of those locks for you. Because if she wasn't a copy of Cortana, she would not have access to all the systems and stuff.
But why did Cortana...
By the way, real quick, snapping and pop culture, very hot right now. Very cool.
I've seen West Side Story. I understand, Kyle.
I was thinking more Thanos, but yeah, that too.
So
Snapchat.
Why was Cortana able to access all those things then? I don't understand why she was special for accessing this Forerunner tech.
Cortana was drawn into the Forerunner domain at the end of Halo 4. Okay. So in 5, she was like, I now have access to all this lost Forerunner.
Okay, that's the part I was missing. Okay.
Technology. Why it had to specifically be a copy of Cortana, I don't know if they explicitly give the exact reason, but her mission was to infiltrate the Halo's defense systems and lock Cortana down for retrieval. So to me, it's just one of those things where, well, it was easier for her to infiltrate and trick Cortana into being trapped somehow. It's not exactly clear. You have to interpret it, I think.
Well, I also thought Cortana was just
they came face to face. They came face to face, and then knew Cortana just kind of mimicked hers, and she thought she was looking in a mirror, and then that's how she
like a Marx Brothers thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was just saying, because Cortana is like the most advanced AI, right, in the universe, like they would need the most advanced AI in the universe to combat her. So that's how I read it. That was less confusing to me.
I know,
but that was just that I could totally be wrong about that.
After Halsey created the weapon, she gave the weapon a lot of systems and subroutines that she also gave to Cortana to beef her up and make her a more advanced infiltration AI. Because that's why in Halo 1, she's so easily gets into the systems. She wasn't just a normal smart AI. She was the best humanity had made.
So I did a Twitter poll after I finished this game. Just to see, am I nuts? How's everybody else feeling about this? So I tweeted from MinnMax's Twitter account, for everybody that finished Halo Infinite, how well did you ultimately understand the story? And 17.3% said, I understood the story. Now, to be fair, 40% voted, I didn't play the game, which I was trying to make it seem so just for everybody that finished it. But so the majority was 33% says, I got the broad strokes. And I'm kind of curious to see other big games, how that would compare. Kyle, we were just kissing the ass of Guardians of the Galaxy just for video game storytelling. It's it was a lovable story, clean blockbuster storytelling. I'm curious, with that poll, it's what the percentage would be just for people that say they understood the story that they just went through, which seems like that's what we should be striving for in the game industry.
Hanson, you mentioned this thing once. You're a big fan of the Mission Impossible movies, and I think about this often.
Oh, yes.
And you joked once that if in a Mission Impossible movie, what would happen if in the movie theater they paused the movie and someone stood up and was like, "What's going on right now? Explain to me what's happening."
Spotlight on somebody in the middle of the theater.
Explain it. They're just like, Tom Cruise is doing stuff. Who cares? And that's kind of how this feels too. I don't really know what happened. The reason that I said that the most talked about thing was that interaction between Weapon and Master Chief is because that was so easily understandable. Even though if I didn't understand the context, I understood, okay, he tried to delete her and she's mad about that. That's a very easy to understand conflict, and I think it was well executed. All the set dressing around why it was happening, I totally went over my head, but I appreciated that those two human moments of her being mad about that, and I liked that.
Well, and even if a lot of the other stuff confuses you, I still feel like you're spending the whole game going after Eshram and then the Harbinger, and by the end you realize, okay, she's trying to release the Endless. The Endless are worse than the Flood. We're stopping her from doing that.
Right.
And that's easy enough to understand. I think we all walked away with at least that much. It's just a lot of the other stuff also ended up being a little confusing, and then the ending was just such a weird thing to be like, wow, how 3 days have passed by. What happened? And they're like, we don't know.
Well, I think what they're trying to do with that, and I don't know, obviously, but they're trying to just imply that the Endless are distorting time. Like even they make some reference to like, oh, the signal's coming from so long ago. Whoever she's contacting, whoever she's opening the gate to, it's messing with time. Like, Wade, do you have any more insight into what they're hinting at there?
Yeah, I think you're right. That was my read, is that like the Endless. Okay, so did you guys look at the legendary ending cutscene, the post-credit ones? So
no. Can you explain them to me?
So it's the same cutscene as we had in every other version post credits, except there's a voiceover.
So it's just Atriox doing a little weird unlocking thing or whatever.
That's right. So same cutscene, but there's a voiceover between the monitor of this Halo, Despondent Pyre, and the Grand Edict, which is a new Forerunner character we are just learning about. And there's a date that flashes on the screen, which is 100 years after the Halo rings fired. If you look into the lore, again, you have to read the books or whatever.
Sure.
Anyway, the conversation basically is talking about how they've discovered this species that survived the Halo's firing. And the few Forerunners still around are freaking out about that. And like, what does this mean? And what are we supposed to do about this? So it's essentially the conversation that takes place just prior to them sealing the Endless in these silexes, and talking about how that they need to like preserve their truth, and that time will forget that they ever existed. Despondent Pyre responds by saying, time is not a construct we can control. And then Grand Edict responds by saying, we can't allow it to be theirs, implying that the Endless somehow are able to travel across time in some way. If you look into the audio logs that you get of when you find the rings, and you get the audio diary, and it's funny, it doesn't actually play, like the weapon talks, but you have to go into the menu and play it. It's Despondent Pyre talking, and she's talking about how she's discovering these ancient structures on the ring, and she's the monitor, but she doesn't understand what they are and who made them.
Yeah.
I think it's implied that they were made by the Endless are also called the Xylonin. That's also deep in the parts of this game. And she talks about how there's this, like, she sees like rings inside of rings, which is kind of cool. If you go into those series of rings and you stand at it the right way, it's like a nested series of these circles. And so I think they're setting up the Endless as this like trans-dimensional, trans-temporal species, which could potentially cause a lot of problems for the Forerunners. And so I could see why they would want to imprison them. Because
then some food would be left for the Flood to eat? Because is that all the Forerunners care about, is trying to eliminate all life so the Flood doesn't come back? So Despondent Pyre says in another thing, I forget exactly if it's I think it's an audio diary. She says, I used to think the Forerunners' greatest fear was the Flood. I now think their greatest fear was losing their power. So I think that implies that the Endless could potentially be powerful enough to like take over the galaxy. Or the other theory is that if the Flood do infect the Endless, then the Flood can travel through time because they would inherit that power somehow or something like that. Right. Suriel,
That's scary.
Suriel, I'm looking at your face. I'm squinting and I'm appreciating it in your beauty.
You're appreciating my face?
I'm appreciating your face, yeah. No, but I'm looking at your face and I'm trying to think, does where this game end off leave you excited about new story content in Halo Infinite? Because in theory, that's their plan, right? I mean, they've said this is the foundation of Halo for the next 10 years, is we're going to keep rolling story content into it. Like, if they released a new expansion of story stuff, would you be like, oh, I'm curious to see where this goes?
I'd be curious to see what form that takes. Because we've talked all about the story, right? And obviously we can't, disregard it from the game that is going on.
Totally.
The game that is going on that entire time. So it's like, I don't know, is it going to be a new island? Or is it going to be like a set of new missions that kind of tell a new story? But in terms of story, like I mentioned earlier, like it does feel like they kind of, it's kind of when you almost trip while you're running or something, and you kind of like you land on both feet, but it's like it's a stumble, right? Like you can see that it's like they almost fell, but they managed to recover, and then now we can keep going.
Right.
That is like what 4 and 5, and then part of this feels like. This feels like the recovery part of like, okay, now we're standing back up. So now from here we can we have our carte blanche to just start over, and we can keep rolling out new content. And obviously, it's from what Wade said about there being time travel involved in the next one, they basically can do whatever they want at this point if the Endless are going to use time travel to, muck with the Halo timeline or whatever ends up happening. But I would be curious to see what they do. Like, are they going to do more combat arenas? But in terms of the story, it's like I kind of don't know where they're going next. So I just have a general curiosity to see what the story is. But I don't know that I'm like, I need to see what happens next in this story. I'm more curious on like an academic level of like, okay, so where do they write themselves into next, versus like, I got to see what happens to Master Chief.
I know this is going down a stupid rabbit hole, but thinking about like, okay, time travel in the Halo universe, what is the most interesting thing they could do with that? On the simplest level, it's let's bring Cortana back to life. But it's like, I feel like, my God, have we beat that dead horse, right? Like this game seemed like as much as they could possibly do for trying to tie the bow on Cortana and Chief.
I feel like they have that with the weapon of like, okay, this, for all intents and purposes, this is just Cortana now. And like, she doesn't have rampancy, so we don't have to do that. I feel like if like maybe Wade would have a different answer, but I feel like the kind of like nostalgia thing would either be some return to Halo 1 or like, somehow going back to like, here's when the Forerunners first fired the Halo rings. And like, for some excuse, you either have to help them or hinder them of like, we have to stop the first Halo rings from firing for some weird reason. Now you get to see a Forerunner and you get to see the original like thing that basically started Halo.
Would that be cool, Wade?
I really hope it doesn't come to that. It's it just becomes member berries at that point. I mean, stories should grow and evolve.
Wade, have you been aware of pop culture over the last 7 years? I
know. I don't know. I'm not crazy about the idea of time travel in the Halo universe. It doesn't seem to fit. I'm more interested in if like, maybe some like time like bending or some strange things, but not just like Back to the Future style. Hey, we're going back to when this happened. I'm not
back to the Pillar of Autumn, and Chief has to watch Chief.
I mean, they did remake Halo 1 and 2 already.
Yeah.
Like if they hadn't done that would be kind of fun. But it's like there's a great version of Halo 2 that's on your Xbox right now.
And plus, when this game's
what if Master Chief has to go back in time to reach and get the Noble team out of there before the planet explodes, and then we're gonna use them to help the Arbiter take down the flood.
Has that got enough heart for you, Wade? Or are you scared of it? And it's
I do. I wanted to just touch on this real quick. So I totally agree with you guys in criticizing like the aspects of the story, even though I gushed all over it, because it does have a lot of problems, especially at the very end. I was disappointed we didn't learn the weapon's name, and then also when they played the triumphant end of Halo 2 music.
Cortana.
Like,
Wait, it's
and everyone's like, all right, here we go, and I'm like, yeah, but where are you going to? I don't feel like I can go with you because I'm not sure what the hell you're doing next.
There's no what now. Yeah,
we're finishing the fight. We're clearing the Banished off the ring, right?
I guess, but
which was the point. What you were supposed to do in this game, though. That's the problem. Is that, like, now we can start Halo Infinite.
It is that same problem with like Halo 5 and that the Halo book that I mentioned of like we go through this huge story and then it's like they haven't really tied up what we were supposed to do, but we're going to do the next big thing. Not sure what.
Yeah,
so but it does have problems. But I will. I just want to quick tie up that. Why I love it so much is because I felt like the Halo as a story was just in a nosedive at the end of 5.
Okay.
And so at least now it's like back on an upward trajectory, which just makes me so happy. And so that's why I really appreciate this game.
Yeah, and my takeaway was similar in that I came out of the experience kind of so, but it strangely made me excited for the next Halo more.
Really?
Because it's like,
mission accomplished. That's what they want to do.
I mean, they did a good job, and I guess it's really just that one line of the Endless are worse than the Flood. But they did a good job of kind of setting up the threat that the Endless are. And then supposedly at the end of this one, okay, well, they're going to show up in the next one. And just kind of that hope of like, what I really want from it most, aside from whatever time travel stuff, I just want a new enemy type.
Really?
With a bunch of different new enemies that will hopefully behave differently than the ones that I've been fighting for, 5 or 6 games at this point. That would be cool enough for me to kind of wrap a story around and, hopefully throw in some new abilities for them and new abilities that you can get. And that's pretty much all I want. We've talked a lot about the story when really the gameplay is what kept me going through this entire thing. And the story was just kind of every now and then there was a cutscene I was a little confused by, but got to go back to shooting stuff.
That's an interesting take, because I think that they did that in 4,
right?
And people hated it. Like, here are new enemies that behave differently. Here's a bunch of new guns that
don't do it. Don't do it like those ones. Do it good now.
Yeah, so that's I think that's kind of the problem that they had like to figure out what they want. Like, okay, do you guys want the nostalgia trip? Like, to some degree in this one, maybe you do, because it's like the environment is like one of the most memorable Halo environments basically throughout the entire game. Like, all the enemies you're fighting, there's some new twists. You know, we have like basically the same system from Gears of War 5, where here's like the Needler, but it's like the special Needler that you got from killing one of the bosses throughout the map. And like, but you also want something new. You don't want this to just be a regurgitation of 3. So it's like, you can kind of see like all the different rocks and hard places that they were placed between just in making a Halo game. So it's very interesting to see now that like what Jeff wants, and what I'm guessing some portion of the audience wants, is like, I just want something new now. But something new that's not flying robots. Okay, so no flying robots then. In the next
but those flying robots looked really cool when you blew them up. It was like that cool kind of like blue mesh, like I really like that. Yeah. It kind of made it.
The other weird, not to go off too far on a tangent, but my other favorite thing about those new weapons is that they were like, not antimatter, but all magnetic, where it's like the weapons like change or whatever. Like, as you're reloading, they kind of reform themselves. But like, for some reason, a shotgun is like the best thing you can do. Is like, we got to unclip it, put the clip in, and then flip it back up again.
Keep it simple.
That is peak shotgun design. It will never be topped. Not even aliens can outdo that.
It looked cool in Terminator 2. It's looking cool forever, buddy. Chandler here submitted a comment over on Patreon to tell Jeff to stick it. He said, it took until I was almost finished with the game to realize that this game doesn't have the Promethean enemies 343 created for Halo 4 and Halo 5. I always thought those enemies were annoying to fight, and this game proves my point that Halo already had all the enemy types it needs.
Well, I agree that those enemies were annoying to fight. I do not want more Prometheans.
Sure.
I would hope that 343 could come up with a new interesting enemy type to add into the mix. Sure. That it doesn't just have to be Brutes and Covenant, and then maybe the Flood if we're lucky. Like, I'm sure you can come up with something.
The fun change up here were like those Brutes that ran at you. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that felt like genuinely different for Halo. Like, that could have been.
There were the flyers as well. Like
the flying
I feel like I fought flying enemies in Halo 2. I thought they were the enemies from Halo 2 when they first showed up. So like, I want more stuff like the Brutes running at you, where it's like I had to figure out how to take those guys on. And, you know, it was the grapple shot ultimately and a lot of like melee work, but that's the sort of strategy swap I want, really.
Yeah. And it seems like, you know, if you want to read way too much into little tease, is that, you know, let's see, actually, I will find this person. Ben Fitter submitted a comment over on Patreon, and it says, overall, I enjoyed my time with Halo Infinite, but the number one thing I found myself missing was variety in regards to the environments and set pieces. One of my favorite pieces of previous games is bouncing between drastically different areas like snowy mountains, coastal beaches, massive cities, orbital defense platforms. It's part of what made the Halos themselves so interesting as well. They're artificial. You can have whatever you want on them. By the end of the game, I was practically begging for a desert or something to mix things up. So it seems like, you know, the last area that you see Chief standing for the final cutscene is kind of like a deserty looking area, and obviously you're thrown back into the end game post that, but it's like maybe that's their slight tease or slight nod to the idea that, hey, that'll be a, you know, if you want to be a robot about it, an AI about it, it'd be like, hey, that's a good marketing beat, is for the next big expansion or whatever they do for the story content in Halo Infinite moving forward, it's like a different biome for each one. It seems clean, right?
I think we're all used to Zelda games where you have the map and then you've got the different corners.
Yep.
The different theme park rides,
But that's Halo 1 and 2 and 3. I mean, you know, like those levels were different. Yeah. I mean, one thing I weirdly want from the future is I want to take Echo back to Earth. I want to fight on Earth. Like that was like such the marketing beat for Halo 2, and then it was like one level or two, maybe 3 levels, and then you were back out in space. It was like, I kind of want the fight to go back to Earth. I wouldn't mind if the whole game took place on Earth for like a follow-up, you know? Also, and then emotionally, like, I don't really buy that Echo is like, all right, you know what? I'm good. Let's just stay here and fight. It's like, no, we can take you home. Like, you want to go. You've been here a long time. Let's take you back.
So just on the confusing story beat here, Luke Strain here tell me if I'm nuts for this comment. Luke Strain says, from the very first time we saw the pilot in the story trailer a few years ago when we saw the recording of his family, I had a strong feeling that they had already been destroyed along with the Earth by Cortana. So I was disappointed by the plot twist that the Earth was already destroyed. I wish they just told us from the beginning, as that would have made the stakes feel higher. That's incorrect, correct?
Wait, Earth was destroyed?
No.
Wait,
So,
did I miss some
I think
huge...
I think
Okay,
Luke
all right.
might be combining, you see the banished planet blow up, and then there is a reference to Cortana attacking Earth,
Yeah.
attacking one station,
all right.
and there's some comment about Chief where he's like, we were just trying to survive after that. So I think Luke might be combining those two.
Yeah, she attacked the headquarters of the UNSC at Sydney, Australia
Right.
with a Guardian, but she didn't blow up the planet.
Where, okay, as somebody who played Halo 5, Wade, these Guardians I hear so much about, it's the subtitle of the frickin' game. Where are they now? Was there any explanation of what's going on?
So that's the confusing thing. After you see them blow, they're basically like a combined Death Star.
Right.
And so I was unclear how anyone was able to best her and lock her down. It's like, how can you even compete with that? Because when the Guardian shows up on Earth at the end of Halo 5, it EMPs the entire planet. And the fact that the only way the Infinity got away was an emergency slip space before it happened. And so in my mind, I'm like, what can even compete against that? It just EMPs anything that gets close to it, and then it just wipes them out. So they don't really explain that. But
yeah.
one thing that I totally forgot to say last time, because you asked me, where do I think we're going for part 2? And I was wrong.
Right.
But you can see a Guardian crashed into the ring in the distance. You see like the wings. And I thought I saw that, and I was like, instantly reminded of like a divine beast in Breath of the Wild, like in the distance, like, oh, we're going to go there and we're going to confront Cortana. That's where it's going down. We never did. But I think that's the hint of like, okay, there was a Guardian here and it was defeated somehow, whether it was the Infinity or the Brutes, someone took it down.
Yeah,
but
I think that's what the like gap does. I think that helps them. Like the gap is like a big somehow of just like you kind of assume that the banished are so powerful that like, and they have like you're trying to get through them to Cortana, so it almost feels like, okay, Cortana, somehow the banished were able to best Cortana in some way, but it's like, yeah, it does feel like there's a missing like thing.
Yeah, I just would like to know a little bit about that. But what's cool is talking about Guardians. And I love this. So I didn't know about this, but Bungie actually made a design for the Guardian, and it's in Halo 3. It's on. It was cut from the campaign, but they put a hologram of it on the epitaph level. You guys remember seeing that?
Okay.
So that and the blue one is from Halo Infinite. It's in the Silent Auditorium. They put it back in the game, and this is what it looks like in Halo 3. By the way, before they cut it, it was supposed to be in the campaign where you fight it.
Okay.
And they have very strong references in Halo Infinite to that Guardian design. It's a Guardian Sentinel, I think, technically, but I think that was what eventually became the Guardian, because it's got like the floating, like, wing. But
I mean, to take a step back, like, are they just asleep during Infinite because Cortana just dropped them? Or are they just kind of floating around waiting for someone to reactivate them or something?
Well, it seemed like only one was at this Halo and it got destroyed. So yeah, maybe they're just sort of off in the universe, inactive. It's not clear. We don't really know, at least not as presented in the game. I'm not sure about in the wider fiction.
Yeah, so Bread here submitted a comment on Patreon. Says, I want to talk about how much of a bummer the way they wrapped up the story with Cortana was. Given how much they were talking about her for most of the game, probably due to the extremely negative reaction to the story of Halo 5, I wasn't expecting a lot, but I was expecting more than that. To learn that she just was backed into a corner by Atriox and sacrificed herself off-screen was extremely bizarre. Didn't the last game and this one imply that she existed all over the place and controlled an army of planet-destroying giant robots? And one guy just kind of caught her off guard? Even then, we only see it in a hologram flashback. So she destroyed herself to just take out the Zeta Halo functionality. Basically, it's like this super important character sacrificed herself just to do a little bit of damage to this Halo.
So she did two things. Yeah, she destroyed that. She made the Halo inoperable, but then she deactivated the weapons deletion protocol.
Right.
So Chief then had her, so he could complete his mission, because without her, he couldn't have done what he does. Right. So it's sort of like a little bit of like a Bioshock thing, where she or like Burial at Sea Part 2, where she like set up what was about to happen.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, with that idea that, and her final message of just saying like, I messed up, but now I realize that the point of me was fueling the proper relationship between you two, and it's all up to you two now. Thank you, goodbye. But they were perfectly fit for each other, her and Master Chief.
Perfectly suited, which is a line that Halsey says in the beginning. Earlier on. She says, Chief is perfectly suited. So it's just fun how they have little things like that. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think we've already kind of beat this into the ground, but Rich Carrasco just says, watching holograms speak poorly written exposition, that's a bit harsh. Sorry, after we're all bashing on it for 40 minutes, is not my ideal way of experiencing a story. I tried my best to listen to these moments, have a better idea of what was going on, but I regularly found myself just walking on so I could do the next fight. Yeah, I hear you, Rich. I think we kind of got the idea at this point, but I think my main problem with the story is just you are so inactive in it. Like, you just aren't really engaging with it. You personally aren't moving things along in a big way. It is so much of just walking up to a platform and then holding out your hand. Then she walks out and reveals something else from the past. It's just a weirdly inactive role for Master Chief. And there's I bring this up way too much, but I think about it a lot, where Matt Stone and Trey Parker from South Park, they were talking about what they learned about storytelling like 15 years into doing South Park. And there's this video of them talking to a college class, which was interesting, just about storytelling and writing. And they said the big thing that we learned is we kept writing stories that weren't good, where it was this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. And they're like, but just zooming out, when working on the outline of a story, every time we changed and to a therefore, it resulted in a better story. Like, this happened, therefore this happened, therefore this happened. And this feels like a master class in just and storytelling. Like, how much therefore storytelling is happening from the impact of Chief here? Very little overall, right?
I mean, he basically is the thing that like opens all the locks by saying like, this needs to be deactivated. Chief, go do that. Right. A lot of characters are talking around him, which, I mean, that was kind of his role in Halo 1 in a way of like Cortana was basically the main character, like facilitating all of the changes in that story. And Chief was basically the gun that let her do that. Right. Of just like, we need to get through this hallway. You need to plow through this hallway with a shotgun so I can open up this thing. And so like that is kind of a lot of what Chief was early on. And then like in later games, especially like in 4 and 5, I feel like 4 and 5 were the games where I feel like Chief had the most agency. But like those games definitely have their problems. But this is a little bit of a version of like Chief kind of stepping back in that sense in agency.
Yeah.
And it is hard because half of the stuff has already happened before the game starts.
Right.
And so like, how do you convey that? That's not just like a big lore dump for people who didn't play the last 2 games and kind of get them set up for this world. I don't hate the idea looking back on it that, hey, we started kind of halfway in it and we had a lot of mysteries after the first half of the game, and they filled that in as best they could. Unfortunately, that means a lot of holograms talking to each other that, were supposedly recorded in the moment when those events were happening. But I don't know how else you do that for stuff that happened previously, unless you're doing actual flashback.
Yeah, and I feel like in a way, like to speak to your analogy, Hanson, it feels like they are stuck in those therefores. Like they have so many things that like these things happen. We need to resolve all of these therefores. And like, so they kind of just start resorting to ands of like, okay, this happens. like the therefores are invisible, right? Where you're like, okay, this happens because we had to pay off this thing from the book. And then this other thing was because of the thing that we showed you before. So it's like, there's a lot of stuff that's like, okay, now we can, like the ending is like maybe the best part because it's like, okay, now we've kind of cashed all our chips and we're ready to go. Right. And like, that is the ending of that story, which is why I feel like the story is messy, but it ends in a good place.
Yeah. Yeah.
It makes me wonder, though, like, what would happen if they tried something a little different where, I don't know, maybe you defeat Eshram, but you get to, at the risk of talking too much of Bioshock Infinite, like with Slate, you get to choose whether or not you kill him. Which, by the way, the what is it? The horde mode firefight place. The name is failing me. You guys know what I'm talking about, where you got to like, he's like, arm yourselves, and then you got to like fend off the...
Yeah. I forget what
the training facility, whatever it is.
That reminded me so much of the Hall of Heroes.
Wait, did you just play through BioShock Infinite, or what's going on here?
I do play through that game a lot, but no, it's just like it's the same thing where it's just like the big bad on the loudspeaker talking about how he wants his men to have an honorable death, and he's just taunting you the whole time, and then in the end you get to decide whether or not you kill him, which is a cool thing because you feel horrible either way. And so, but yeah, Halo doesn't really give you that choice. Not that it ever did. Halo's always been you go do this thing. And they dress it up a little bit more, I think, in some of the other games. But Chief has never really had a lot of agency per se, and maybe that's something that should change. Maybe there needs to be more. I don't know.
Well, he's a good soldier, you know. Ben Shively writes in, let's just jump into this over on Patreon. He said, did anyone else think that the training facility section in House of Reckoning felt out of place?
That's what it is, House of Reckoning.
Yep. I guess it would have been built to train Banished how to attack UNSC outposts, but it didn't feel right in this highly guarded structure. The culmination of fighting Jag at the end section made it all worth it, though. Jeffrey Cloutier, real quick, Serial says, I thought the Banished capturing the Marines was dumb. It was a great gameplay mechanic, but why would the enemy do that? Then I got to the House of Reckoning and the Banished training areas, and now it made total sense. I didn't understand that. So it was just that they were training to capture them because of these training facilities?
I feel like they had basically holed up in what was a training facility. That was they kind of like took it over, right? And they were kind of in that area, but it wasn't super clear. But like, I do kind of agree that it does feel out of place, but it's also my favorite part of the game, gameplay wise.
Yeah.
So it's like I wasn't minding too much when they were like, get through basic training, get through advanced training, get through like the finale training or whatever it was, the last one. But yeah, it did feel like, I guess they're just gonna put me in this weird, like it felt like a weird finale for this thing to take place inside of the training regiment. But like gameplay wise, that's where all of those game strengths come together really well for me.
I'm totally with you. Yeah, it's like, this is odd, but it's unique. It's memorable just to have literally, hey, we always talk about the Halo sandbox. Here's just a little sandbox inside of a larger room. Go at it, you know?
And I think maybe the reason that he is doing all that kind of hyping up of himself is because, okay, you're kind of trapped here. You need to get up to this thing, but I kind of have you where I want you. So instead of just like doing a thing that would just kill you, like I want my men to die a good death. So instead of like me just like, whatever, like sucking all the oxygen out of the room or whatever, like he's like, I'm going to give them all the chance to die honorably by saying like, oh, I'm going to stick all of them on you, and like whoever gets the chief first wins, basically. Which I think
he was just killing time to like do all the programming to do that complicated thing where if you shoot him, it'll damage Echo. He's like, it's going to take me a while to set this up. I got to charge my hammer. It's in airplane mode, so it charges a little faster. Why don't you mess around in these rooms for a while?
It's going to be sweet, though. Morin writes in and says, I'm really surprised how Asharum grew to become a truly great villain in my eyes. In the end, he was just a soldier, and I love how Chief treats him with respect and honor. Yeah, that was a nice little moment at the end there where Chief is, hey, he was a soldier after all, right? Am I right, fellas?
I think they were going for like they were trying to, I guess, mirror how he treated like the Spartans when they were fallen, something like that.
Yeah,
it is funny though that like I did think of that line of like maybe there's a little bit too much leeway in like I was just following orders versus like Barrett's quote from Final Fantasy VII where he was like a good man in service of a great evil is not without sin or whatever. It's like like just because you were saying that you're like following orders does not make you like morally, like it doesn't get you off the hook morally. So they are playing that kind of like game recognized game, like you're a soldier, I'm a soldier. It's like you're a really good soldier though.
Paolo in the comments, by the way, in response to that, just mentioned that they're kind of, the Banisters kind of like Klingons in a lot of ways, just kind of pulling from Star Trek there. Mick Manga writes in and says, I love the theme of understanding that ran through the story. My favorite moment of understanding came when Asharum died in Master Chief's arms. I found it surprisingly moving. They were both soldiers trying to do the best they could for their people. Yeah, but Master Chief didn't record 400 holograms of him being like, I want to eat you, buddy.
I'm going to eat your bow.
He did. They're all just silent because he doesn't talk.
That's right. Very smart.
It's hilarious to think about Escher being like, all right, hold on, no, we're going to take that again.
It's like the first Master Chief audio log is like, I learned very early on, speak when spoken to. 4 hours of silence.
The most humanizing thing I saw from the story in Halo Infinite, I just stumbled across on YouTube today, where it's the commercials. Wait, I'm curious if you remember these. The commercials and trailers for Halo Wars 2 because as Kyle...
The used car salesman?
Yes, where it's all Atriox, who now we know so well from this game, I guess, but it's him just like in these absurd situations of like trying to sell a used car or like on an airplane. There's all like comedy bits and it's like, it's amazing. It's like, I know it's completely different, but it's like, where's this personality? Where's this Atriox? I want this Atriox. I guess you're totally right.
They took all that energy and poured it into grunt dialogue, and that was it.
And then that cup overfilleth, and they just kept going with it. But I got no complaints. It was fun.
It's fine.
Hey, and that's all good. Let's see. Sandshrew writes in over on Patreon and says, I agree with the sentiment that too much of this game was told through holograms, but one scene I liked was when Cortana called for Atriox's allegiance. Cortana says, look upon Doisak. What's the name of the planet again? Anyways, one last time, and remember you chose this path. Then the planet blows up, and then Atriox says, as did you, Cortana. Atriox not even trembling at the sight of his homeworld being blown up and even threatening Cortana back did such a good job of making him look like such a badass who won't ever falter in his beliefs. I wish he had a more active role in the story, but instead we get great value Atriox to deal with. I think that's version of SRM. P.S. I hate how they glossed over the Flood like they were chumps compared to the Endless. I hope they come back in a DLC or something. Maybe get a certain AI mention of the legendary ending involved. I'm spitballing here.
Did you guys see? So I went back and I played through on Legendary before tonight.
God bless you.
Did you, in the opening part of the game, when you first emerge after defeating Tiberius, the first boss, there's an area that you can find that I missed the first time, where there's a Silex of the Flood infection form.
So what does that
hidden?
What do those words mean, Wade?
Thank you, Wade. Kyle, I didn't want to say it.
Hold on. You know what the Silexes are? They're those.
What is a Silex, Wade?
All right. Here,
is it like a carbonite?
Think of it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like carbonite.
Okay. Those are like the genetic books, right? That are like holding the species. Okay.
Yeah, and this one has like a special like shield around it. The others don't have.
So that's Flood.
Yeah, that's the Flood, and the ones that crawl on the ground.
Yeah,
that's the infection form.
It's like the DNA sample of them. Is that effectively what that is?
I think so. Yeah, it's not exactly clear, but yeah, it's what they use to then repopulate. Exactly.
So
that's cool.
So that tells you
that's pretty cool.
That tells you what, that the Flood are more likely to return now in some form because someone
they exist still in the galaxy.
Okay.
It's that problem, right? Where they keep getting rid of the Flood, but there's like one guy that's like, well, I'm just going to keep one. I'm sure we'll be fine.
Right.
And then
which is a weird choice for the Forerunners who like built these halos to destroy all life in the galaxy or galaxies just to make sure that the Flood are absolutely wiped out. But then we got one hanging back here next to
You've got to remember, there's different factions of the Forerunners, and the ones that built the halos are different from the ones who preserve the life. They're different, like ideologies.
Okay.
Don't be an idiot.
Okay.
Idiot.
That's good, Wade. They should put more. They should put more of that stuff in the game.
I agree.
And explain it honestly. They need a little floating Wade orb that goes around and just explains what the hell's going on in these games.
Despondent Wojcik. Barrett Boswell writes in and says, the boss fight with Elite Jega Radomnai was a unique fight I had never encountered in any of the Halo games. The dark, claustrophobic setting in the ship gave me vibes from the movie Alien, had me scrambling, determining how to best get him through much trial and error. I think 343 deserves some kudos for creating an experience Master Chief has not really been faced with before. That was kind of a cool, unique fight.
That was a moment of like, oh yeah, I have something other than a grapple shot that I need to remember how to equip for a moment here.
Yeah, but I thought that was cool to like, because you get in that space and they're playing like the audio clips from Echo's family and stuff. It's like, oh, that's cool. I think that stuff works.
I did like that. Yeah.
For that part though, it took me like 30 minutes to find that little tiny thing. Because I had thrown up like a turret. I knew I was going into a boss fight, and I had ripped a turret off somewhere, and so I like grappled it up to be with me in there, and then I was carrying it around. But because I was carrying it, it wouldn't pop up like the display of like, hey, interact with this tiny little thing that was on the ground. So I was just like going around listening to my surround sound, like, where is that sound coming from? I didn't even know what I was looking for.
Yeah, I had a similar thing, but then it's like, when in doubt, hit the scan. Oh, there's the thing I got to go interact with.
Right. Yeah, we use the scan, Jeff. Matthew Roberts.
I was using the scan.
No, I also had a tough time finding that. Yeah. Matthew Roberts said, as soon as the game locks you into the final few missions, it really is a slog. The dull, repetitive environments and the increasingly boring story just sucked all my joy away. I didn't even bother with the last boss. You didn't even bother. You just gave up? That seems harsh. Steve
You're not
Bellegard.
allowed to ride into the deepest dive. He didn't finish it.
That's true.
I'm ultimately not negative on the overall experience, but I experienced a little of that in that, like, I felt I got railroaded into the main missions. Like, I feel like within this chunk, after the Pelican crashes, I feel like there was like one spot where I could have gone off and started doing side mission stuff, but I was like, I'll just do the next main mission. And then I felt like I was locked into the rest of the story at that point.
They definitely do not warn you about that, but I think I had a very different reaction. And by the time, like, I had that moment of like, oh wait, I think I'm locked into the end of the game. But I have stuff that, man, I actually don't know if I have all that much stuff I want to do, because by that point it's like, okay, I felt like I've seen this loop, it's fun, but I have all the upgrade. Like, I'm not gonna go back and upgrade the little radar detector. I don't think I need any more of that.
Right.
And I'm not really getting that meaningful upgrades after upgrading your health and your grappling hook.
Totally.
So at that point I was just like, yeah, the game is just like, go finish the game. And I was kind of like, you know what? I think you're right. Like, I don't need to do the rest of these objective points. I think I'm kind of like, I think I've squeezed that kind of the fun out of that sponge at this point.
I think I would agree, except that I would have appreciated having more side content stuff just to break up the monotony of the objectives, because like the formula really started grating on me of like, go to this place, do a fight against a couple of Covenant. Go to this next place, do the exact same objective, but maybe there's like a ghost that's hanging around there. Go to the third one, and there's going to be 2 fucking hunters there in like a closed space that I have to somehow take down. And they pulled like that sequence like 3 or 4 times in those last missions, and it was like, oh my God, now I'm going to do the hunter. And then you go to the House of Torment, and it's like the large scale of that, of like, oh, now I'm going to advanced training. Like, what? Like, you got to come up with a little more mission variety. Yeah. If I can be going into the third section being like, okay, those 2 freaking hunters are going to show up somewhere, and then they do, like, that's a problem.
Well, it's one big homage
this time around,
for sure.
Yeah, especially the red hunters that show up later on.
Mm-hmm. It's all one big homage to Halo 1. And you remember how Halo 1 gets a little repetitive with those environments towards the end?
I know, and I feel like I have to eat my words from the last episode, because that was like one of the nicest things about the first half of that game, or at least what we played, was they didn't repeat a lot of stuff. And that was super nice, and that was super refreshing for a Halo game. And then I think like the first mission of this part is like, you have to go to 4 towers and activate them in sequence.
Yeah, right.
And that one especially, because it was like, okay, you're going to this spire because there's something important in there. You get there, you fight your way up to it, and it's like, oh, the door's locked. Now you have to go to these 4 spires. And it's like you spend 45 minutes just getting techno things to go back and open that door. Like that,
right.
But the mission as a detour, just like that format, I don't know why game designers ever do that, because it just feels like I've been stalled on my progress and I have to go do this other thing. If it had been more naturally built into the gameplay of like, you're going to go here, you're going to defeat a guy. Now you're going to go here and you're going to get a map or whatever, I don't think it would have grated on me as much.
Yeah. And there's little moments in there where they try and trickle out a new hologram with each spire that you unlock, everything. And like there's a little moment I really like where I think it's the first one that you get when you're on that kind of quest to unlock them all, where Esram is doing his normal scream into the hologram thing. And then at the end, Weapon just goes, thank you. Like a sincere thing is just hanging up. It's like those little character moments I do think are good in this game.
Oh, we didn't talk about the end of that little island Pelican Down area when you go back. There's a really nice character moment with the pilot.
Yeah.
When you find him again. Which, by the way, when you find him, he's wearing one of those classic Halo 2 helmets that look really dorky. The Marine helmets that they got rid of because they were too bulky. Anyway, I just really like that moment of finally, because up to that point, he's been so just kind of understandably, just angry at the chief and not wanting to participate in anything he does. But then he kind of breaks down and like confesses that he just feels like he's worthless and, doesn't amount to anything, and you should just leave him in with garbage. And so there's a really nice moment again. Those character to character moments with Chief are just so impactful and are it does a great job with him, and that one especially.
Yeah, Rory Sublet wrote in about it and talking about the same thing. He said it felt like a rare human moment for Chief, telling him that he'll get him out alive, and that thud when he kneels down next to him, that's some emotional weight, says Rory.
Yeah. Did everyone else's controller just like vibrate like really hard? I thought it was funny.
Jump.
So can I ask you a behind the scenes question?
Yeah.
How do you like pull relevant questions so quickly? Do you just like Control F your notepad really quickly?
I highlight.
Impressive.
Thank you. I highlight keywords in the questions in highlightable things in Google Docs, and then I Control F for words that I remember because I read through all these a bunch. Thank you. Nice. Thank you for asking, Kyle.
Good work, man.
Hey, thanks, man. I guess my question, even when Weapon is getting deleted, she's like, hey, all I care about is that you keep that guy alive. You keep our boy Echo rolling, all that stuff. Why? My question was like, isn't any Marine that you're freeing more valuable than Echo? Like somebody who isn't even a pilot, he just stole the Pelican?
Hanson, the Weapon only knows 2 people, okay? And he's one of them. Like, what do you want? Like, she's only got 2 friends. One of them already betrayed her. Echo was the nice guy,
She likes a nice beard. She's really into a good beard.
Also, she's like, we got to keep him alive so somebody 30 hours later can ask what his name is, because I've been dying to know.
Too embarrassed to ask.
I thought you asked.
It's too late.
Yeah. There was a scene where you free him after a storm. It's like one of those comedy beats in the game that I don't think hit unless I was missing something. But there was some like moment where he's like, hey, and now what my next question is. I'm paraphrasing it poorly, I forget. But he's like, my next question is, where's the nearest Pelican? And
yeah,
like,
anybody seen a Pelican?
Yeah, it's like, what? Like, I don't understand.
And like, they both are like, ugh.
It was so bizarre. Like, were we supposed to be annoyed by how much, I guess he loves the Pelican? Is that the joke?
I was a little unclear on that as well.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not insane.
Wait, that was Wade's line of confusion?
Because he was like, because they were like, and Chief kept walking, and he was like, hey, it's been a long, he's like, I've been locked up, or so he said something.
I've been busy, I think he said.
Yeah, I've been busy, yeah.
Yeah, I
had a lot going on.
I get his whole beat was to constantly worry about getting back home and getting the engine and all that stuff. But let's see. Oh my gosh, where should we go, Jeff? And pick a direction where we could go. Do you want more story? Do you want more gameplay? Because we got a lot of comments about all this stuff.
Let's do some gameplay stuff.
I'm sorry, you called my bluff. We didn't get any gameplay stuff. Let's talk about, Joe Kovchinsky writes in and says, it seems to me that people who say 343 turned Halo into a Far Cry game are operating on a 10-year-old, i.e. pre-Witcher 3 paradigm of Ubisoft's open worlds. The way to play in Ubisoft open world these days is to set your mission marker halfway across the map, then forget about it, stumbling across side missions, checkpoints along the way. There's no breadcrumbing to the Halo open world. It's just a handful of discrete events sprinkled around a few bases. There are no side quests that didn't turn Halo into Far Cry. They turned Halo into Saints Row 3. It's a minor miracle that this shallow world is so damn fun to play in. I hear you, Joe. It is overly simplistic for people to be like, Halo's Far Cry now. It's like, they could have done that, and it's not really what this game is. It's
Yeah, like there's not a lot of like, Chief, like we are like, there's not specific stories of like, we've figured out some sort of like encampment here among the Marines after you freed us, like, but we're missing our generator. You need to go and get the generator for us. And she was like, okay, I'll risk the end of the world for this.
Right.
So like, there's not a lot of like side. He's right in that there's not a lot of side questing. But I think once I figured out that like this entire thing is just a giant playground. It is not an open world in the traditional sense. It is just a way to get you into fights that are more varied than they used to be because you can approach them from various angles. A lot of what this game is clicked for me. But he's right in that it is not like an open world game. It is just a giant like playground to play Halo in, basically.
Yeah.
I didn't take over that many FOBs myself. Like,
really?
I probably did like 4 or 5. Like, if they were near a main objective, I would grab them. But otherwise, like, I would just kind of roll past them if I was on the way to somewhere. And like, I know that's not how most people play. I think most people like to do the checkbox and get everything. But I appreciated that, like, that was a way that I could play, is I could just kind of focus on what I wanted to, and I still maxed out my grapple shot and my health, and I was happy.
Right.
I honestly think that's the way to play the game, because I was very much the like, I'm gonna hit every objective on the thing, and I got to a point like halfway, like after the first discussion, that where I realized I just wanted the game to end, because I took over an FOB and it kind of shows you a bunch of objectives, and instead of being like, oh cool, I was like, ugh, more icons that I have to compulsively tick off my list. Right. And that was when I realized, like, I should just stop doing these because they're no longer fun.
Optional objectives, half the word is optional.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like this is a game that was definitely like, just do this loop until you're tired of it and then go do the main missions, which like the quality of those kind of vary, but like I like that it is not like, well, like that you can basically get the best upgrades in the game pretty quickly, and you're not like, well, if I tackle the end now, I'm not going to be prepared, right? Like you never really feel that way in this game.
Yeah, so there were a lot of missions, even like in the main story, where there's a mission called The Road, which is kind of a good example of like, hey, you're kind of back out in the open world, but not really. You're kind of just moving down this canyon or whatever. Where, yeah, it was to the point of like, why am I fighting any of these guys? Well, I'm just going to grapple my way through this as quickly as possible, slam the buttons, open the gates.
They tempt you with the tank and the wraith.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, is that when the classic Halo theme kicks in, like hardcore? Right?
Yeah, it really hits music.
Yeah, like I jumped in the tank, and then the Halo, like they were like, we're not messing around. This isn't a remix or anything. This is the Halo theme. You're welcome. You've played this far. You can have this moment. And it was like fantastic. I was like, hell yeah, I'll take the Halo theme in this tank, rolling down this hill, not really worrying about making sure I take everybody out. That was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was on the like the road to the House of Torment, I think, or whatever, Fortress
House of Reckoning.
Yeah.
Yes, House of Reckoning. And I like at the beginning of that road, I was definitely trying to kill everyone on the way, and I was getting blown up so many times, and I was like, F it. I stole a ghost and I flew all the way down to like there's a big wall at the end where like all the enemies are just waiting for you. I jumped out, I grapple shotted my way over the fence, and then like the gate came down, but like I think it triggers like a really short cutscene, and then like the entire battlefield was just clear and everyone disappeared.
That's amazing.
Yeah, all right.
I
did just go inside now.
I did something similar, but like I just ran, and like I had the dash upgraded to where like after you dash you turn invisible. So between that and that grappling hook, I basically just booked it the entire way, and no one like really touched me the entire way. It was really cool. Like the fact that you actually can approach that mission multiple ways is actually kind of cool.
Hey, no one's watching this, right? I can ask a question and not be shamed by it.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Anybody else die? I don't know, let's say an infinite amount of times while playing this game.
That's the subtitle of the game.
Okay.
There are definitely difficulty spikes for sure.
Yeah,
okay.
I would say like some really weird spikes, and I got stuck in some really weird places. And most of it was those two hunters. And it's like when you kill one and it aggroes the other one, and like depending on where your save state is for that. Like I was low on ammo once, and there were multiple times where I was playing through it and was like, I played on normal mode because I wanted to be able to go back and play on heroic later, because I'm probably never going to do legendary. But even as I was playing through it was like, oh, I'm not doing this again on a harder difficulty level. Like this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Playing on legendary, there are parts where it is punishing. Specifically, like Escharum was really hard. The hunters, obviously, but the one that really got me was when you're fighting the Harbinger on the last phase. There's the Brute Chieftain who will jump across the map and one shot you with a hammer.
Yes, that guy.
He does that on normal too. To be
yeah, and like. The checkpoint on legendary is really like, really hard, because like you have to fight him, beat him, and then beat the Harbinger, and kill her completely. And if you die anywhere in there, you got to fight that chieftain all over again. And it's so hard.
Yeah, I wonder if the checkpoints would change with difficulties, but that was definitely a huge struggle for me. Was that final boss and just beating that last piece of crap,
and just not fun at all. Like the idea of your end boss design is just that. She zips around super fast, and it's like it's hard to shoot her before she zips to the next spot, and then you're going to call in waves of other enemies and do that 3 times because you always have to do everything 3 times. Like that kind of difficulty escalation was really grating on me.
I think a lot of it had to do for me of like how quickly I discovered that the laser beam that they give you is like the best weapon in that game, for just like melting everything. Yeah. But it's like anytime that I forgot that and was like using like any other weapon, it was like, oh man, like these guys can take so much punishment. And then you just like, oh, there's more ammo for the laser. Great. Now I can just melt like basically this entire wave.
Yeah, they give you the cinder shot and the sentinel beam are really effective.
Yeah, the sentinel beam is really good.
Jacob Geller, friend of the show, wrote in, you know him from the deepest dive on Edith Finch, that everyone's still raving about. But he says, I want to specifically focus on the sentinel beam. I felt like I was using this gun for like 40% of the game. It's stronger than almost anything else. The drones drop ammo for it constantly, and despite the cool disintegrating animation, it's incredibly boring to use. Strains at the first half had me juggling weapons so consistently, and the second half had me just zapping things with this laser nonstop.
Yeah, I think part of it, is that excitement of like, oh, this is the best weapon in the game to like, this is basically the only way I'm going to get through this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Man, I really fell in love with the Mangler early on and carried that thing through the majority of the game. Awesome. I was surprised, because I'm not usually like a pistol guy, and it's essentially a pistol. And like, anytime that weapon popped up, I was like, yeah, I'll grab one of those for sure. I don't like the way the Sentinel weapons feel. Like that sort of like, you press a button and you just see a straight line. I don't know. I just don't find it very fun. Sure. Like, I would almost rather embrace the challenge to have a cooler looking weapon, which is maybe a stupid approach. But
yeah.
No, that's valid. But for me, I was like, you need something for the headshots and the jackals and grunts to like just pick them off quick, and then something to take those shields, and then for the elites and brutes and stuff, which was Sentinel Beam all the way.
Thomas Hoster writes in and says, I was happily surprised during the Tavares and Hyperius boss battle. I'm playing Legendary and had spent probably 1 to 2 hours on them. I kept fighting and killing the one, not on the chopper, then retreating to find power weapons. I just couldn't get him off and kill him. Well, I finally picked up the Hydra and blasted him with it. I realized how good it was in the campaign compared to multiplayer. Yeah, so that was like the big mission in Pelican Down of like, hey, we got some Spartan killers. Are Spartan killers, is that a terminology from Halo previously, or is it new?
I don't think so. I think it's new.
Okay.
But with that fight specifically, I didn't see this in my playthrough, but Hyperius is the one who has Spartan Locke's helmet as like a trophy.
Oh, really?
On I think his shoulder.
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool.
And not that he's necessarily dead, but he was defeated by this brute.
I look forward to that comic book. Those guys were such chumps for me. Like, again, playing on normal, but it was just a thing of like, oh, that was a cakewalk. I just sat in a ghost and shot the guy on the ridge for a while, and then he died. That was like the easiest fight in the game. Let's see. Drew Marcus says, as if the grapple shot couldn't get more satisfying, I was impressed at the usefulness of the first strike upgrade. This came in handy with flying enemies or when I was low on ammo and needed to deal extra damage. The way the camera pulls back to show a third-person view of Master Chief was an excellent change of pace. Still fun throughout the entire game. I hope I'm not sounding too negative.
What? A third person? What is this?
What? With the grapple shot, you hold down melee, and then he does the crazy bam move.
Oh. I mean,
when you ground pound
the way I guess I never held down the melee. I would just hit it at the end of the, and I never saw that the whole game. I did a lot of grapple shotting to enemies and punching them and defeating them, and it felt great. But I never saw this third person.
Kyle,
thing.
go back. That's the money shot, baby. Okay. Go back and play the entire game.
All right, go back.
Kyle, when you punch them, would it explode electricity and like shock everyone around them?
No, they were just die.
Because that's one of the upgrades too, and that's
it's very good.
Did I mess this whole thing up?
Really
you messed it.
You blew it.
Delete your save file.
You're just lucky Cortana didn't
delete my Xbox Live account. Start no achievements. Just start over.
Right. I didn't really see the utility of that. I didn't know that it had was like a giant shockwave. So I saw it once. It's like, oh, this animation's too long, and it like never did it again.
Oh my god, you maniac. Luke Strain writes in and says, in the first half of the game, I stuck with the grapple almost exclusively. Now, after a bit of practice, I've had great success and fun switching between the 4 equipments mid-battle. I love opening with the radar, then combining the grapple, dash, and drop while mid-fight. It's a big help when playing on heroic.
I was going to ask that question to people because I guess just it's only 2 buttons that you have to switch between, but that just like broke my brain in a way that I could not pull it off if I was like, hey, I'm going to grapple to that tree, and then as I'm flying through the air, I'm going to switch to my turbo power and
100%.
like shoot farther. Like, just could not do it. I wish you could remap it and just have them on other buttons. I would have given up some other functionality to just have them a little easier to switch to.
But at least it was nice that like grapple was always right twice. So it's like whenever you need to get back to the grapple, it's just all right there. But I'm totally with you. It's like I would use this more, but I'm genuinely just too stupid to memorize the different inputs.
Towards the end, it was like in the last maybe 3 hours or so that I like kind of took time after an encounter and said like, okay, up left is this one, upright is this one. Like if you like memorize those combinations, you can sort of do combos. A little bit, yeah. It's like if you do like, but it's like backwards because a lot of them require you to go forward and like forward up instead of like down, forward down, whatever.
That's right.
But like it like there were a couple times when I was like, okay, I'm gonna drop the shield, switch the grapple, and then like grapple away so they're shooting that thing, and then I can dash out of the way and turn invisible. But it's like it happened maybe a handful of times that I felt like, okay, I'm utilizing these combinations versus most of the time where it's like my instinct is always to like grapple from one enemy to the next basically and just clear out the map that way because that means I'm constantly moving and constantly in safety.
Yeah, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to grapple here, and now I'm going to switch to the dash real quick, and instead I've like switched to my banished grenade instead. Because
yes, it's so easy to accidentally switch grenades instead of switching equipment. I think that's one of the most universally complained about things, and I agree. It's like, of course, right is grapple, and legendary having the drop wall is so important. So right left for that, and that's all I could remember. It's all I had room for in the brain.
Yeah, Zach Ink also mentions that, on higher difficulties, that drop wall is crucial. I think I used the drop wall once throughout the entire game.
Like the tutorial when they wanted you to
I think
use
so.
it.
And I understand that's probably a big reason that I was having so much trouble is just like, I like the grapple. I feel naked without it. I don't want to ever leave.
Yeah. I mean, I think the walls, like the easiest time that I like kind of saw my opportunity to use it was whenever I was up against a guy with like a Gatling gun. So it's like because they move really slow and they're going to fire on you constantly and they're going to melt you even if you're grappling. Right. So that was the thing where it's like if I throw the wall down, I can get some like easy shots at them and basically whittle them down and then I can grapple away.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like those weapons feel so marginal because of how they're assigned to the D-pad. Like, and I don't know how you add another, like they need another D-pad on that controller just for this game. I'm very curious to see like what keyboard and mouse minded players, like if there's like a different shortcut where it's like, yeah, if I have all my hotkeys, I can like use these a lot more easily, but I played on a controller. So I have no idea how that.
From what I've heard, it's also limited. It's also limited on the keyboard. Like you do have to like hit a button, then another button. Makes me wonder about the original Xbox controller, how there was the black and the white button. And I think one of those was switch grenades.
Bring those back. I agree, Wade. Put them on there.
Honestly, I feel like they should make a special edition of controller that had those, and we're bringing back the black and white buttons.
Yep,
they could totally get away with that.
I mean, there's the Pro controller which has the paddles on the back, but like I don't think you could make those different than the face buttons, if that makes sense.
Also, like, I don't think you can also can't map them to combinations, so it's not like you can press one button to do them.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Dougie Too Fresh writes in, says, after I completed the game, I went back and played some more in the open world. I heard a grunt say something like, okay, so you beat us, but did you play it on Legendary? Amazing, says Dougie. that is very good. Fred DeNovo.
What skulls did you use?
Fred DeNovo says, my favorite part of the second half was cheesing the high value targets after I unlocked the Wasp. Can't get me up here, fellas, says Fred.
They do end up getting a lot more enemies that fire like the EMP rounds or whatever that disable your ship. So you have to be careful. But it's like it is kind of a lot of like I'm ducking and diving those specific shots, but everything else I'm totally cool with.
Yeah. Brian W. writes in over on Patreon and says, one of the coolest moments I've had in an open world was going back to the excavation site after it was already cleared to snag some cores. The space was filled with suicide grunts sprinting around every corner. It was awesome. I had to kill at least 30 of them before I could grab the core I was looking for. That does sound cool.
I like that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and it's nice that they kind of repopulate areas after you've cleared them out. It would feel a little dead and boring if they didn't do that. I don't know. It's just nice. It's like, oh yeah, patrols are kind of coming back, and it's like a constant struggle to retake the ring.
Yeah. Wesley Minner writes in and says, I noticed that if you shoot an elite before it knows you are there, you can one-shot it in the head because it won't have its shield up yet. Once it enters combat, they hit a button on their armor to turn on the shield manually, and you see it turn on. I thought that was a nice touch and added a sense of realism that the shield consumes a battery somewhere, so ideally it shouldn't be on all the time.
That's cool.
Awesome. Clemens Zobel says there's a type of grunt who carries a bunch of weapons on its back. If you find one sleeping, you can sneak up and loot the weapons right off its back without waking up the little guy. That's amazing.
That's cool.
I had no idea. Patrick O'Connor says, I can't be the only person who thinks the jackals sound incredibly like the Vorcha from Mass Effect 2, right? No, that seems about right. Remember they're the big spiky guys. You remember the Vorcha. Also, the way the enemy barks always seems to be timed to land just as you've instigated their death, and it's incredible. No doubt, it's incredible. Sean Mills says, I like that there are multiple video game Easter eggs in the loading screens, including Killer Instinct and Ninja Theory. I love that Ninja Theory one. My favorite one is...
What's the Ninja Theory one? I don't know if I saw that
Oh,
one.
I forget exactly. It's something about... Would it be about stealth? I forget what the tip is, but just the idea that like they're incorporating the name of the studio that Microsoft purchased. Like, such a fun thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Look, you call me on my bluff, Kyle. Sean Mills says, my favorite one is the one that says, my life for hire. Elite zealots are fast and devastating at close range. Little StarCraft reference for you, Serial.
That's right.
Which
I did notice that one.
Which, of course, Serial, we all know how the zealots say that.
My life for hire.
No, I think it needs to be more.
Okay.
Could we get like a second take? Wade, you're a director. Will you direct him to say my life for hire?
All right, we're going to take that again and action.
I totally forget how the line looks. I think it's like my life for hire.
Cut.
One more out of you. You said you could do this during your audition. Get out of here, you hack.
In the point 5x5. I don't know. I remember the Terran lines most of all.
Medic sounds. I don't know.
It came from behind. Oh, that's Warcraft. Sorry.
Wraith the Waiting Order.
Wade, how exciting was it for you since you're a big Halo fan and you watched Aliens for the first time within the last, year?
Yeah.
It must have been fun because, that's where In the Pipe 5x5 comes from, which is also used in StarCraft. They got it all there. Let's see. Oh, Grizzled Gaming has a comment. They say, the thing that really caught my attention was getting diamond achievements the entire back half of the campaign. You mean to tell me that less than 10% of people played the game only made it halfway through? It's not even that long of a game. That's crazy to me.
I mean, keep in mind that this game has a free-to-play multiplayer component. So I think there are a lot of people who just tried it once and were like, okay, I played an hour of Halo, I'm good.
But not the campaign.
I also
they're
think
tied to the same achievement set.
Okay.
Yeah. I think even, and I could be wrong about this, but all Game Pass games are automatically added to every subscriber's library. So like it counts all those people, I think. I would assume. Because those percentages are very low, and I think that's why. Yeah. Is because like a bajillion Game Pass subscribers own Halo Infinite, and maybe 30% of them have played it. I don't know. I mean, I'm just guessing. But.
Sure. Did anybody else get any bugs? Anybody catch any of those weird bugs? What was your biggest way, do you think?
So after I had the game on for a few hours, like weird polygons would just start jetting out from like things. And it would be I don't know if you guys, it's a very weird visual bug, but I'd have to reset after that happened. It wouldn't go away. But that was the only one really. God,
the biggest one that I got was just at a certain point. I'm trying to remember if it was like after a cutscene or what, but just I was outside and then the entire world just like the colors just got completely messed up, and it's like all the shaders disappeared. I know nothing about the tech, but it felt like that. It was just suddenly like everything is the same tone. There's no more shadowing, and it was just horrific to look at. And it wasn't until, it lasted for like an hour or so, and it was like the next cutscene kind of popped it out again. It was really bizarre. And also just weird stuff like in the end game, going to the map, it just like chugs like crazy. It's like, I don't really know what's different here. Or there's the cutscene, like the one that you really liked, Wade, with Echo talking about, I just can't do it, dang nabbit. Like that was running at like 14 frames per second or something during that transition. It took a while to catch back up. And this is on a Series X. It was really...
that was you blinking through the tears, dude. That was.
Honestly, I went back because I was grabbing stills for potential thumbnails from that scene, and like I think this is a very specific thing. I think Echo's eyes during that scene are really interesting. Like he has his eyes closed through so much of it. It's like a weird, I think, effective way of conveying emotion for a character. He's always just like, and then he'll open his eyes for a second, and then he goes back to closing his eyes while talking to Chief. It's kind of sweet.
Yeah, it wasn't so much a bug, but I think I definitely got increasingly frustrated. Like the way the vehicles feel so squirrely, I feel like in that open world went from like, oh, this is just like some fun chaotic thing to like when I was in those like moments where I would just constantly get killed in a vehicle against like, you know, one of the bosses and stuff. I went from like, okay, if they make another one of these open worlds, they need to figure out I got to the point where it's like they need to figure out a better physics model if they're going to put this in an open world. Like the kind of way they work now feels like it almost makes them useless compared to how powerful the grappling hook is and how good it is. Like I feel like they need to kind of figure out a better model for that stuff. But like I'm obviously a lot harder to do than that. So
yeah. Small things here. Ampex Infinite says, I think it was a cool detail that the chip slot in the back of Chief's helmet flickered in different colors depending on who was talking to him. So it was green when Echo 216 was talking and blue when the weapon was talking, for example. That's cool. Aaron T says, if you hold the turret, the camera moves to third person. You can actually see the current gadget you have equipped on Chief's armor. Only one gadget appears at a time, though, except for the grappling hook, which is always visible. It was neat to see what the equipment actually looked like, but I thought it was strange that each gadget wasn't permanently on the armor, since none of them overlap. They're all in different spots.
Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense for the equipment to only appear when he's about to use it versus it always being on him and ready to deploy. Like
That's like Link.
Well, I mean, the implication is he has all that stuff on his back, right? But it's like when you're making a cutscene, it's like, yeah, I don't know. That feels like a little weird. Like, why wouldn't it all just be on him if it doesn't overlap? Yeah.
More miscellaneous stuff here. Mitch wrote in and said, because I didn't hear it come up in the first half, let's hear some love for the skyboxes. Looking up and seeing that halo stretch across the sky never gets old. That is true.
It's an incredible skybox. And I think I did mention last time that if it's like day, you look up, then you see it is at night. Mm-hmm. And there's like the ships, the banished ships that are up in the sky. There's one stationary directly above, but some of them do move. It's really cool to watch them just like slowly pass overhead.
Oh, that is cool.
Yeah, beautiful sky. And like at nighttime, like you can see the galaxy, and it's really nice.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, Blacklink Firelink writes in, classic, asking, what is a Harbinger and why was it the last boss? Well, look, hopefully we covered that a little bit for you. Wesley Minner, I missed this earlier, says, hey, I don't know what I was doing wrong on the last boss battle, but I must have failed around 50 times. Not much coverage in that arena, enemies surrounding you at all times. Harbinger kept one-shotting me. Maybe it's because I didn't power up my gear by doing so few side missions. I got very frustrated, to say the least. Yeah, I think that was just a tricky fight.
The Harbinger does one-shot you on Legendary for sure, even with upgraded shields.
Yeah, I saw somebody on Twitter, and I don't know if it holds true for that fight necessarily, but they brought up like, what is it with 343 and their commitment to every boss design arena just being like two circles, where there's an inner circle, then an outer circle with like a hallway around it. It's like, I guess a fair number of fights are in that structure.
Absolutely.
Let's see. Newtman has a broad one for you. Saying, how did y'all feel about the way the game handles mystery? I thought a major component of the story and narrative design was maintaining the mystery of what happened to Cortana and using that to propel forward. It seemed like they purposely avoided answering any specific questions, and by the end, I was 80% as confused as it was at the start. Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this, but it's like, it really should have, I think, tried to be clear about what the stakes are, why you need to care as the player, and where it's headed once the game is over. Though it really didn't quite do that, sounds like, for all of us. But again, it's like this game made me actually genuinely interested in learning about the deeper mysteries and lore of the Halo universe. So, doing a lot of reading after beating the game actually made me more interested in it, as I'm sure they probably intended people to be. But it's like little things, like at first I was like, why was the Banished? Yeah, why? We said this last time. Why does the Banished want to fire the Halo ring if it's just going to kill them too? But then I played it again, and it's like, well, it seems like they're not interested in firing the Halo ring. It seems everything I'm seeing in the game tells me they're much more interested in being allies with the Endless. There's a line of dialogue during the last fight when the Harbinger says, like, kill him and earn your place among the Endless. And they have all these like excavations around the ring that you can sabotage, where like they have the big spaceship trying to like move the ancient ruins from one location to another. And they're working so hard to like reassemble the silent auditorium for the Harbinger. So it really does seem like they're not trying to shoot the Halo. They have deeper, like more nuanced plans that we never really learn about. It's just hinted at. So again, it's like not knowing those stakes as the player is really hard to then feel invested in where it's going.
Yeah. So they say, Asharim yells, "The Harbinger and the Banished share the same goal. Honor the will of Atriox." So that's weird. It's like, I would think Harbinger is playing, next level chess compared to somebody like Atriox. So,
well, I mean, I think they are allies because at the end, you beat the Harbinger and then she says, you have all you need. Tell him, I'm sorry it took so long. I think she is speaking to probably Atriox somewhere else on the ring.
Okay.
Because then he goes and unlocks the Silexes. So he has everything he needs to unlock the Endless. One thing that is interesting to me is that I wasn't entirely clear why the Banished were interested in this Halo in the first place, except for hunting down Cortana for revenge. But when you think about Halo Wars 2 and about how the Banished were on the Ark, it's plausible, and this is getting deeper into the Halo iceberg, but that they uncovered something about the Endless on the Ark. And
okay.
I can if you like, I can go deeper into that because this is the deepest dive.
Yeah, name of the show, man. You gotta.
Do you guys remember in the last boss fight against the Harbinger, those 3 statues that were transmitting light around the Harbinger in the arena, and the weapon said the connection is sentient.
Right.
The source of that are these 3 Forerunner statues around the arena. And those statues are of 3 Forerunners, and each are holding up a tablet. The tablet is shaped like a Silex, and you know what's on this tablet? It is this ancient text that's been on the Halo 3 level sand trap for 16 years.
No.
And all these Halo fans didn't know what it meant. This text is everywhere in the Silent Auditorium. There are so many Forerunner statues holding this text. And now it's this like source of this deeper connection. And so it's like 343 is really pulling deep from the Halo mystery chest.
That's cool.
To try and so it's like, well, maybe, and we know on the Halo multiplayer map Sandtrap that the Brutes were excavating those ancient ruins from Halo 3. So it's like, well, the Brutes maybe found something on the Ark that Atriox was at in Halo Wars 2, maybe learned about the Endless, and now is on this ring to set them free. And because there's some deeper plan. I mean, Asherim does say like we are one step ahead of you the whole time. So maybe they have intentions we're not aware of yet. But it's really cool that like there's this really cool mystery that people are trying to uncover that they are not even hinting at. I don't know. It goes deep.
Yeah, I love that.
That is cool. Yeah.
Neil Smith is talking about the after credits scene. Is it the past, the present, the future? I think that's the confusing thing. Is it's the VO is different from the image that we're seeing, right? That's what it was, Wade? I think we're talking about that.
Atriox is in the present, but the voiceover from Legendary Edition is from the past.
Right. And so in that Grand Edict guy, he says, the Criterion has given the order, offensive bias has been deployed. What is this,
you guys remember last time I talked about Mendicant bias?
Oh, yes.
Mendicant bias was the most powerful AI ever built by the Forerunners that was to destroy the Flood. But the Primordial, which was one of the first Flood forms, which was the last, he called itself the last precursor, also called the Timeless One, hint, hint, was on Zeta Halo. And Mendicant bias interrogated it and then eventually got turned, like Sauron and Numenor, like corrupted Mendicant bias. And then Mendicant bias, like, controlled the entire Forerunner fleet and then was going to wipe them out. Offensive bias was created to combat Mendicant bias, sort of a weapon Cortana thing. Offensive bias outmaneuvered Mendicant bias and stalled him long enough to fire the Halo rings, and then his fleet was destroyed. The Mendicant bias fleet was destroyed. So offensive bias was then became more powerful than Mendicant bias. So 100 years after the Halo fires, the Grand Edict is now assigning the most powerful AI in the universe to contain the Endless. And so when the weapon says something's helping me, it could be offensive bias somewhere behind the scenes pulling the strings.
Jeff, what was your favorite part of offensive bias?
When the Grand Edict assigned him to Mendicant bias.
Yes,
powerful. I thought that's what people would use to complain to game reviewers who liked a franchise, and they would review it in a positive way.
Bias.
Yeah, pony boys. Dunder here wants to compete with Wade. They say, when Master Chief was activating the code words in his attempt to delete the weapon, I was very surprised. I was
going to bring this up.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Dunder got to it first. I was very surprised at the mention of Samuel 34. This is a big lore piece from Fall of Reach, the book. Spartan Samuel 34 was John's very good friend in early Spartan training. He died over 30 years ago when, after his suit was compromised by a plasma pistol shot, he volunteered to stay behind to hold off the Covenant to ensure a bomb detonated and allow his fellow Spartans to escape. He was the first Spartan to die in combat, and his death had a major impact on John and his leadership development. The use of this name and related event as a major code word helped to show Chief's humanity and the events that shaped him.
That's right. And also Red Flag, which was the operation that Cortana was initially tasked for with Chief. The operation that got canceled by the Covenant arriving at Reach. That was when they were going to capture, the Spartans were going to deploy to capture a Covenant hierarch, a prophet, and then negotiate a truce. But then they discovered Reach, and then it all went haywire.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that's an easy place for Easter eggs. Sure.
Thank God you're here, Wade.
Thank you.
I mean, this is all the stuff that is like, it makes the story of the game make more sense and it makes it more interesting. But it's like one of those things where it's like, you can tell this game was made by fans for better or worse, right? In a way that just feels like, okay, we're going to throw all this stuff in. Not like usually like super necessary to understand what's going on. But it kind of, when that stuff is like in one ear, one out the other when you're playing, it just creates this effect of like, I have no idea what's going on. Yeah. But it's like once you dig in and figure out like here are all the pieces they've laid out, it's really interesting, but you don't know what any of these pieces means if you haven't, if you're not also a super fan in this way.
Exactly. And it is unfortunate. I totally agree. I really do wish that this stuff was more accessible to fans. It's how I feel about Destiny and how all of the most important, most interesting things are in the Grimoire, like that you have to just read. They both have the same problem, and it does affect your enjoyment of the story ultimately.
Is that still the case for Destiny, Suriel?
Oh yeah, so they released like a grimoire anthology every year that is just like here's a leather bound book with a bunch of entries we've added from like our grimoire that we release every once in a while, and all of those stories are always like they start off kind of dense and you're not really sure because it's like disparate entries, but by the end of it it's like I've learned the story of Marasov, and it's like a really cool like self-contained sci-fi story about these people who attained immortality, and like they all kind of figured out because like one of them was like, okay, I was the first person to become immortal, and I was basically like a god that was going to determine what the rest of you were going to be like, and I said like, oh, you're going to be immortal, but you're not all as powerful as me, and that was like my instinctual thing that I did when I came to the other side, and so now they all hate her for not also making them as powerful as her, and it's like, here's a really cool story that like it's just you're never going to see that in the game. It's just not going to like it's just going to be text, right? It's just going to be like a cool backstory that it's like someone at some point when you're playing with them, it's like, well, here's this entire story that I'm going to tell you right now, but as a player, like, how am I supposed to know that, right? Like, it doesn't, like, the game story is weird and dense, but it's like when the backstory is really where all the cool stuff happens.
Yeah, and it just bothers me because I really do believe that there's got to be a way to make it more accessible in game, because that's the interesting stuff. That's the meat of it,
Yeah. A lot of people wrote in with what you were guessing was the most common comment, Kyle, just about the weapon Chief stuff, that scene where, she was going to be deleted. Tony Cummings says the emotion in a lot of the scenes with Chief was great. How can you trust me? I don't, but I want to. Made me cry. That said, I thought the cutscenes without a big emotional pull were lackluster. Yeah, but a lot of people, like, that scene was the highlight for a lot of folks. E.N.T. Clark, I'm a Biggie Boy, they all wrote in about that scene where he tries to lead her. And I love, like, how quiet he was after. Like, he's almost, like, embarrassed. Like, so much of the game is them, like, hey, Chief, you got a family? Like, trying to get a little bit out of him. And it felt like after that, it was just kind of like, you cut me, sorry. But, what was he going to do? Like, she was getting corrupted and all that stuff. And then she didn't get deleted because she just said no. I was a little bit confused about how she like defied that.
Yeah, it seems like she like pulled a little like Cortana sneakiness and just stopped it somehow. Yeah. Right.
It's odd. And I think what happens then after that is she does her little podium dance as normal, and then Chief like holds out his hand for her to like walk onto or whatever. And it's either that he's not quite there and he pauses, or she doesn't get on it, then he has to offer it again.
She does a snap as he extends, like, I'm not ready to go yet. I have something to do. Okay. Now you have my permission to. It was one of those little power dynamic things.
Jump on top of your hand, yeah. And I mean, what they're dealing with largely thematically is, right, that idea of Chief has been burned really hard by an ex, And he's trying really hard to trust this new girlfriend who looks very similar to his ex, right? That's the story they're telling her.
Yeah.
Right, guys? Ain't that the story of life, though?
Yes. No, it's not.
Okay, I'll let that sit. Let's see. Paulo says, if you had to put money on the weapon's name, what would it be and how much would you put on it?
$50 million. Fortuna.
Wow. Put it up on screen, Kyle. Show those briefcases. Let's show them what $50 million looks like.
Show me $50 million, Kyle.
Do I see 50 million? So Andy Herzog says, I don't think they said it outright, but I thought they implied that the new AI, the weapon, picked her name to be Cortana at the end. I know Halo is bad at story. Well, hang on. But why would she do that? The new AI is a clone of an AI that was a brutal war criminal. At the very least, Cortana blew up an entire world. I would want to distance myself from that name. What do you think they're going for, Wade, with their caginess at the end there of Chief being like, I know the perfect name?
Well, at my very first thought when she said, would it be okay? I thought, oh, the only reason she would ask that is if she wanted to be named Cortana again.
Right.
Yeah.
But
what other name sticks there? Yeah.
Yeah. But I agree that it would be really weird for her to be Cortana, just because it would seem like, it's like, why would she want to be associated with that? But here's the thing. Brennan Guy, dive deep again.
Please.
Cortana's name, originally based on a legendary sword from the epic poem The Song of Roland from the 11th century about the reign of Charlemagne.
That's right.
The king had 3 paladins who each had a legendary sword. One of them was called Durandal, which was the name of the rampant AI from Bungie's Marathon series. Another was Cortana. And the third was...
Joy Luz?
Alma?
Dang it.
No. Almas. But Charlemagne had a sword, and Charlemagne's sword was Joyous. And that's what I think the name she chooses, Joy, for short, which it would certainly fit her optimistic personality.
Wait, are you reading this from somewhere?
I was writing notes before this.
About Charlemagne? You're just freehanding some scraps?
No, I was indexing my thoughts, and I wanted to get this out. And
that's amazing, because Maniac86 on the Patreon wrote in with that exact thing, saying that he thinks that she's going to choose Joyeuse and shorten it to Joy.
Yeah, I don't think that's what that scene implies, because I don't think most people are going to look like, because I think the way that scene ends, it's kind of like she doesn't even have to say it. Like, you know what it is. I don't think it's meant to be. I think it is Cortana. That or Atriox. But like, because like those are the only two things that you know, right? Like, it's not going to be like offensive bias or whatever. It's like, I think it is. I think it is coming back to like, I'm ready to trust someone called Cortana again. And it's like, and simultaneously, the weapon has earned kind of that right to be called Cortana. Right. I think that is the culmination of that line. Right.
Or,
but
I mean,
what if it's just like Amanda and it just has no relevant?
Right.
I really like Rory, actually. Like, I was looking through the archives of all available names, of all possible names, and I'm going to stick with Rory.
I think Echo 217 is pretty cool. I'll just grab that one, I guess.
Hey, what?
Hey!
Yeah, it is fun. It is funny how like he's like, hey, so what do I call you? And then she's like, I think I have the perfect name. And then he's just satisfied with that. He's like, all right, here we go.
It's time for adventure. They're so smiley at the end. They're trying so hard for like the big rally, like, and now let's go. And like literally like that final shot of them in the ship, like, you know, what's his name? Fernando's smile is just, it's out of like a kid's cartoon. It's so goofy, but sure, they're rallying for the future. Salad. What's that?
He's laughing at his salad. He's as they're walking around. It's like a stock photo image.
Brandon Scott says the lack of a big reveal for the Endless makes it feel like Halo had some cut content. And lo and behold, there are data leaks that show nearly 2/3 of the campaign were cut. Apparently there's a more vast open world with less linear sections. You can even see a fully detailed island on the map that is only partially utilized during the mission The Road. On this island is a giant lake and several highly detailed areas which can be seen by going out of bounds. I wonder if this cut content is being rehashed in a DLC that explores the Endless, or if the DLC would be about other Spartans around the galaxy. I know a lot of stuff got reworked and whatnot. It seems like Jason Schreier, that story about 2/3 of the campaign kind of being overhauled and stuff. But I think it was very much, I would imagine the plan for this game is they wanted to leave mystery and leave plenty of road in the future. So I don't know if the idea of teasing the Endless is kind of a rehash of development woes.
Yeah, and I did hear that they, like Microsoft or 343 had copywritten the name like Halo the Endless.
Oh, that's right.
for an expansion on this game.
Yeah.
And it allegedly, that's the
That'd
theory.
be weird if it was Halo Infinite and then Halo Endless. It's like
Halo Infinite.
That's a like
Endless.
It absolutely will be called that. It will absolutely be called that.
A thesaurus.
Dash forever. 2.
Yeah. I think like someone pointed out there is a colon, but there's not with Halo Infinite. So it's like Halo Infinite is the platform,
right?
And then Halo Endless would be the sub thing.
That I think they kind of implied from the very first teaser with the animals just kind of like running around, which I don't think I ever saw any of those animals. I saw animals. I just don't think I saw those weird rhino.
Yeah, like the rhino,
not the big
stuff.
ones.
Yeah, that is weird. That
you definitely hear bigger animals, but you don't see them.
Always just out of the camera's view. You can never see these cool big rhino guys. But that's what they can say for the future is you can ride rhinos into battle and stuff to fight the Endless. It's their one weakness.
Finally.
Let's see, Jeff, and what did we miss?
I don't know, man.
Here's a thought provoker for you. Here's a head scratcher. So get your hand up on your head. Get ready for it. Get your hand on your head and get ready for this head scratcher. No, don't scratch yet. Don't scratch yet. You gotta save it. Was in this case the internet outrage about that demo from summer 2020 a good thing?
Yes.
Isn't that a weird thing to think about? That caused them to freak out a little bit and delay the game to make sure that it was in the shape it's in, which is overall pretty solid. Like it's weird to have
343's always been like trying to overly course correct based on fan feedback, but it seems like now at least they are doing it in a way that's constructive. Like Halo 4, oh no, we gotta go this way. Oh, Halo 5, gotta go this way. So. Yeah. At least now it seems like they're listening and wanting to give people something that actually satisfies.
I feel like the arc has been like Halo, like 343 being like, hey, we remade the Master Chief, we remade the games you like. Well, not like that. They're it's kind of busted. And they're like, what about a new game? Not like that. And what about this in Halo 5? It's like, no. And then Halo Infinite, okay. And like that is where we're at with like 343 and Halo.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a bit of an unknowable because I mean, like if it was the version of the game that just had the core like grapple shot was well implemented and the gameplay was solid, like who knows? It might have been fine. I don't know. Like people freaked out about the visuals, but it's like if you don't have time to sort of shuffle your way through a trailer and like pull out a screenshot of a funky looking brute and you're just focused on gameplay. Maybe it would have been different. I don't know really what shape the game was in at that point. I'm just going off of footage.
That's true.
Yeah.
It could have totally just been like another kind of bullet point and like, okay, here are the reasons we need to delay this game. One of them, people did not like that demo, or like even though maybe we're farther along, we fixed that problem, but it's like this is a thing where we need to get this right or whatever. Who knows like how much of an impact?
Seems like they changed directions quite. I mean, not like drastically, but it's like I think after that they brought Joe Staten on, didn't they?
Yep.
Joe Staten. And then like it wasn't like, oh, we'll delay a month or 2 months. It was a whole year. So clearly something wasn't working.
Yeah, but then in the interviews, Joe is just kind of like, very little reworking. The bones were all there, but it's like, I don't know, man. And like his version of the story
was like, he was Marines could travel with you a further distance. Like that was right. His big upgrade.
I don't know.
Okay, I guess that seems fine.
I think he's a corporate man through and through. No offense to his talents, but I think he's tight on messaging, like a lot of Microsoft people are, or I guess big publishers are. But like
I also do want to hesitate to like praise it too much, like the idea of like, oh well, fan feedback was so negative, they kind of reworked it because that's the kind of thing that happened with the Sonic movie, where it's like, oh, those studios had to like work incredibly long hours and then they were all fired. So it's like that kind of like it's always kind of conflicted because it's like, yeah, that first Sonic looked like garbage, but it's like the situation that led to the Sonic we have now is kind of like there were some eggs broken to make that omelet, which is which I don't necessarily want to praise too thoroughly.
Good point.
And then little animals flew out of the eggs, I think. So there was an interview, I think it was with IGN, where Joe Staten was talking about how he came onto the project, and I forget if it was Bonnie Ross or Kiki Wolfkill, which is the best name in the game industry over there from 343, but like apparently after the demo hit was the gameplay was revealed for 2020, then like Joe Staten reached out to I think it was Kiki Wolfkill and just said like, hey, if there's anything I can do to help over there, let me know. And then he's something like he was on vacation. Go check out this interview for the full story. I'm summarizing. And then like he came back and it was like inbox full, like Kiki had like announced like, hey, 343, Joe's coming on board to help. And he was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I just wanted to help in some small way, but I didn't expect to be like roped into this for an extra year. But I guess it's a good thing, I would imagine. I'm sure it's a boost for the team. All right. Suriel, have we hit everything?
Yeah, except for the Halo 1 pistols in Destiny now.
Wait, what?
The Halo 1, they added a bunch of Halo guns to Destiny.
For the anniversary.
That's right.
For the anniversary event, and they all kick ass.
And does it really look like the Halo 1 pistol?
It is. Look up a model of it. It is pretty dang close.
Oh,
it is like,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and like they added the battle rifle as well. And like the cool thing is that like when you aim down the sights, it doesn't do the traditional aim down the sights. It does the Halo 1, like here's just the scope and like the reticle, and it has like the very iconic pop of that pistol. It's really good. It's really exciting.
That's cool.
That is super cool. Do you know that there's a multiplayer mode for Halo Infinite as well?
There is.
Ooh. And that is phase 3 of the Deepest Dive. No, we're not covering it. But wait, have you been playing a lot of the multiplayer? Are you still enjoying it?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Big team. So what happened was there was no Slayer playlist, there was no SWAT, and so there's a lot of complaining about that.
Right.
Initially, they had said they were going to patch that in, I think, in the new year, but they got it up before Christmas, which was great. But I think that caused some other problems. Now, Big Team Battle really doesn't work at all, so it's kind of a bummer. Oh. But it's been a lot of fun, having a great time. Can I ask a quick question before we adjourn?
Absolutely.
I wanted to pick your guys' brain into what you think the Endless are. I mean, it seems like they might be something totally new that we don't know about in the Halo universe.
Wasn't the Harbinger one? Isn't that what they're going to look like?
Well, potentially. I mean, the skimmers, I think, also are associated with the Harbinger. So the only reason I bring it up is because, like, I've talked about the precursors and about how they, massively predated the Forerunners and created the Forerunners and also threatened the Forerunners' power. But they can't. It's not shown that they can survive the Halo firings, which would conflict with that. But the precursors can take many forms, and they're sort of this like unknowable godlike force.
Cool.
But there's also like some like it bears resemblance to like the Prophet race, the San Shayum, and they have a really elaborate, interesting history that goes back to the time of this Halo as well. And I think they were betrayed by the Forerunners, and the Forerunners are trying to preserve this truth and like this grand lie that maintains their power. Or it could be something new entirely, but it's just kind of fun to speculate given that there's like all this interesting history with this ring specifically in the Halo lore.
I think we've got a classic StarCraft hybrid situation where the Xel'Naga created the Zerg and the Protoss, these two races that were supposed to, and then they decided like the pinnacle of human life of life would be to combine these two together to make some sort of super race, and then you've got to stop that. As the Terrans, this kind of like race that has nothing to do with any of that, saying like, I think we're better than all of this, and then kill the Zerg, help the Protoss, and destroy the hybrids. And I think the Endless are the hybrids in this situation where they have like some peak of potential life capabilities, but then Master Chief just like shoots all of them dead. And that's going to be the plot of the next game.
That's good. I like that.
Maybe like a Mass Effect Geth situation. Like how many sort of evil robots have we fought? I guess the what's it called? The Guilty Spark and stuff like that, but maybe something more brutal. Something just like Matrix robots.
No more robots.
Yeah. I don't want Adjutant Resolution to come back for a third time, and it's this boss fight again.
What are the shotguns like, though? How do they load?
We do need to know that. Do you think it was a hint when Isharam was talking about, he had some line where he's like, oh, this frickin' ring, it goes forever and ever. It's an endless loop. And then like when he was dying, he's also like, he's basically General Leia Organa, when he's like, nothing ever really ends. Goodbye. Like, you think that's some implication of like, oh, maybe they're tying in the loop of the Halo itself with some time loop shenanigans with the Endless then?
Maybe that's
I thought it was like a brand call out. It's like Halo just can't. We're not going to be done with this thing. It's got to go on forever.
Right.
Halo big.
There'll
Halo
always be
infinite.
a new Halo game.
I mean, the monitor also talks about like the endless rings, endless cycles. Are we going to repeat the sins of the past, sort of thing? So it does seem like there's like it reminds me of like Arrival, that movie about how those beings talked in a language that was outside of time. Like that's the vibe I get from the endless, where it's like they just are outside of it somehow and can like see it from a different perspective. So
love it.
I'd be really cool. I mean, I really would enjoy some like rich sci-fi in Halo that again is like able to be conveyed through the game and not necessarily through a novel. Like show some really cool stuff in the game.
Yeah, make them the 12 Mandorians from Slaughterhouse 5, where they see through time, but they kind of look like giant hamburger helper hands, just like those types of creatures. Is that too much to ask?
They're kind of invisible too, aren't they?
I don't remember. I always remember them being hands, but I don't remember if that's
because I remember not to go down a Kurt Vonnegut rabbit hole, but like
please.
when they're in the zoo, right?
Yeah.
As humans, like, hey, they can never see who's looking at them.
Is that
to
right?
them, the humans perceive it as like they're just living in a glass bowl.
So you're saying if I search Tralf Madorian, Kyle, I won't see... Yeah, it's a bunch of weird
Let's
hands,
just do a
guys.
Slaughterhouse 5 deepest dive. We'll watch the movie. We'll read the book.
I would love nothing
Did they do
more.
a show recently, probably?
They just released, actually... Kyle, they just released a graphic novel version, like a illustrated version of Slaughterhouse 5, which is apparently quite good.
Oh.
I recommend...
I'd want to read that. That's cool.
I recommend checking out the Vana Guys podcast. If you've never heard that, Kyle, with Michael Swaim.
Yeah, with
from
Michael
Correct.
Swaim.
Yeah.
Right?
They had an episode where they talked about the graphic novel, but the podcast is...
Get him for
We're
Trivia
supposed
Tower,
to be
by the
talking
way.
about Halo, guys.
Get Swaim.
Jeff him.
Get
This is
Swaim.
Halo.
Kyle, I kid you not. I was literally looking to see if his DMs were open today for Trivia Tower.
They're not. I keep trying to get him for all kinds of stuff. I did actually talk to him years ago at Game Informer for something.
Really? Hang on. I think his DMs...
You
Yeah,
didn't
he had a Kickstarter.
ask then if he wanted to be on the Trivia Tower?
He was still writing for Cracked. He had a Kickstarter game that
I
he
don't
was
want to
working
hear.
on.
I think you're an
interviewed
endless
for it.
and you have time powers. And you should
Yeah. Kyle, his DMs are open. I might want to do that, but I might want to save him for like if we do a movie episode of Trivia Tower in the future. That's what I was thinking, because I think he'd be good
But
for
yeah, no,
pop culture.
Michael Swaim, very funny guy.
Michael Swaim. If we can leave you with one thing, it's the grunts are funny, the dialogue's funny in Halo Infinite, and Michael Swaim from IGN is also funny. All right, everybody. Also, I really liked Weapon's teeth. I like that she didn't have perfect teeth. I thought that was a cool detail.
I did too, actually. Yeah. That's a nice call out.
Kyle, you have really good teeth, though, so I thought you would have hated her. Okay. You do. I seriously think you do, don't you?
No, look at this one. This one's all messed up.
Oh, really? All right, I take it
It's
back.
all out of whack.
I'm sorry to see that.
No, you just ruined Hansen's fantasy.
Yeah, what the hell?
Youth fantasy.
Hey, there we go, everybody. Halo Infinite. Hopefully, we shed some light on the story, and hopefully, you've enjoyed the ride for the deepest dive. If this was your first one that you tuned in for,
Thank you, Wade.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
this is all just code for thanking Wade Wojcik for picking us all up on his back and journeying us across the entire Halo ring. Wade, champion, Wade. Thank you.
You're too kind. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I can, I'm sorry. I
and
have one.
Oh yeah.
Sorry, Jeffem.
Jeff Lum?
Oh, I was just gonna say that in the comments section, Aaron T at one point said, "Oh shit, he's got the iPad again." Diving in deep.
No, I had this thing that kind of summed up the game for me, and I just, again, like I know I'm like coming on strong for like my appreciation for the story, but it's like after beating the game and spending hours savoring the like post game content, thinking about Chief and Cortana's story, how it's finally come to an end. I was on my way to claim a base with some recently rescued Marines. We strolled through a meadow by a lakeshore overlooking a beautiful vista as the ambient music swelled, and one of the Marines had said, "After all this time, I finally understand it. The difference between living and dying is hope." And it's clear to me that that's what the Master Chief represents in this game for the Marines and even the player about the Halo universe in general. And I think that's why he resonates so strongly with Halo's audience and why this game, I think, resonates with me. That clear, like, great message.
And it was that nice thing of in the beginning, like, well, Echo explains that, yeah, I gave up hope when I saw the Chief died, which would be understandable. It's like you saw the greatest soldier get killed in this ship. Yeah, I would go and hide too and try and find a Pelican to steal. And yeah, well, that's beautiful. And if we can leave you with one thing, it's hope, everybody. Hope for another installment of the Deepest Dive in the future. If you enjoy this format, you can help support it over on Patreon. We'd appreciate it. Send some kind words our way, Wade's way. Wade, what would you like to plug? What's your Twitter handle, man?
Well, WADEWOJCIK, but I guess like the thing that I like to post to right now is my YouTube channel.
Ooh.
Where I do like video essays, ambient videos, that sort of thing. And that's just Wade Wojcik as well on YouTube.
Awesome. There's a link in the description for everybody. Surreal! You also came back from the dead for this. So thank you for being here, man. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It was fun.
Okay.
I really appreciate being able to talk about Halo for hours. Halo and other topics for closing in on 2.5 hours.
That's right. Jeff Markifava, thank you for being here.
Always.
Always. Kyle, thank you, Halo champion. We appreciate you.
I take it back.
Okay, that's great. And the point is, thanks everybody. And hey, thank you to everybody who submitted a comment and played along, of course. Your comments were great fuel for this discussion, and you keep us rolling, so we appreciate it. But hey, until next time, Wade, you know what to say.
Let's finish the fight.
There we go. Bye, everybody. You can help support independent games media by subscribing to MinnMax on YouTube here, or you can support us over on Patreon to unlock exclusive shows like MinnMax Council. You can call into our podcast. You can put a picture of your choice on every MinnMax video, or you could have us plug your passion project on the MinnMax Show podcast. MinnMax is a Patreon about games, friends, and getting better, and we exist because of you. Any help telling a friend's appreciated.